Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Jordan Ryan with the Fire and Forget podcast. Today, we're recording episode 8 with my guest today. His name is Garret Biss. A little bit about Garret before I turn it over to him to kind of start talking about his life. Garret is a Marine Corps retiree. He was a pilot in the Marine Corps. He was a Mustang as well, which is interesting in its own right. And now he lives in New Bern, North Carolina, where he participates in nonprofits dealing with recovery, addiction recovery, and also one that he founded before he even got out of the military. So I'm going to turn over here and introduce yourself real quick.
All right. Hey, I'm Garret Biss. Thanks for doing this, man. I've been looking forward to it. We've been talking about it for a while, so glad we're finally doing it.
Yeah, so he has a lot of ventures going on in his life, and I'm glad that he finally gave me some time to come down here and get this recording going. So, what I do with all my guests, by the way, this whole purpose of it is to capture your lineage, educate people about the different ventures and businesses that veterans are participating in all around the country and the good work that you specifically are doing. So, let's kick it all the way back to talk about where you're originally from the United States.
All right. So born and raised in Wilmington, Delaware. And lived there through back and forth a little bit in high school, but lived there through 1999. That's when I went off to Paris Island and jumped on the yellow footprints.
Before we get too far into Paris Island, because I want to talk about the recruiting process and all that, and some of the decisions that made you lead up to that point.
Yeah.
What was it like in Wilmington, Delaware? Because I don't know anything about Delaware other than there are some liquor stores, and I went there one time to send out some cargo when I was active duty. So
Yeah.
I want to tell people about
So
it.
it's tax-free shopping zone, so there's no like sales tax. So a lot of people go there for that. But I do think the alcohol tax is higher though, because I remember we used to run to Maryland right across the state line to get beer and stuff. So I think it was cheaper over there. I know that was a while ago. It's been a
Uh,
while since I've lived up there. So
what hobbies did you do growing up?
I played a lot of hockey when I was younger, and then actually when I was 10 years old, I was in a bicycle accident and I had a subdural hematoma, so broken artery in my brain. So after that, I did a little bit less some physical sports, but whenever I was old enough to get a job, then I just spent a lot of time working.
What occupations did you work in?
Oh man, all kinds of stuff. So when I was living in Florida, I worked at a Christmas shop. So like a lot of Christmas, it was a year-round like Christmas shop. I worked at a Don Olson Tire and Total Car Care, doing like oil changes. Worked at a sub shop making sandwiches, and let's see, worked at Eckerd Drugs as a cashier and a stock boy, and worked at Subway. I think that was my first job.
Subway.
Yeah.
So
I still can't get that. Like I still go in there and it still smells exactly the same. And I can't handle it.
I asked these questions because people think that, especially most
Hmm.
people come straight out of high school into the Marine Corps and a lot of the branches. So I like to hear why people decided to go ahead and join up and what kind of decisions and what thought process were going through their heads. So at what age did you start looking towards the military, and how like that process go for you?
Yeah, so I think I was probably, I don't know, 12, 13, 14, and probably from 14 on, I was pretty dead set about joining. That's when I started buying the Marine Corps t-shirts and like rocking that stuff and putting the U.S. Marines on my car driving to high school. It was really a couple of things that really guided my path into joining the military. For one, I knew I wanted to go to college, but I also knew that as a teenager and even a high school graduate that I wasn't ready to go to college. I mean, mentally, maturity wise. Also, I had no idea what I'd want to study. So one of the benefits I saw joining the military was it gave me a couple of years to go experience some stuff, learn a little bit more about myself, and then try to figure out what I wanted to do. I also noticed, well, I wanted to go to college, but didn't know how I'd pay for it. So I was like, well, the GI Bill, that'd be a bonus. So at least help make that more accessible, more affordable. I There was a movie quote, and it was in Dangerous Minds. You remember that movie with Coolio? He had some Coolio songs in there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So there was a line in there, and it's a very popular line about the Marine Corps. But that's the first time I heard it, and it was was it Michelle Pfeiffer? I think that was the main character in there, and she was playing a teacher that was a former Marine, and that's the first time I heard the phrase "Once a Marine, always a Marine," and that really stuck with me because again, I didn't really know what I wanted to do later on in life. And I realized even if I punted it and fucked everything up and like just didn't amount to anything or didn't do anything else considerable in my life, at least I could look back and be like, hey, at least I was a Marine. Like at least I did something, and I could always kind of like hang a hat on that or look back at that. And then the last thing that really influenced it, that really kind of left an impression upon me, even at that age, was I noticed anytime I talked to veterans that had been in the military. So when I started rocking these like Marine Corps T-shirts and like some old fatigues that I got at the surplus store, I noticed a lot of veterans would come up to me, usually Vietnam veterans, sometimes like a World War II veteran would come up and start talking to me, and you could see the look in their face and look in their eyes when they started talking about their time in the military, and you could see them like go back instantly 20, 30, 40 years before in their life, and they'd recount these really like vivid stories and vivid memories, and I could see that this was a very transformational time in their life. Of it created some fundamental experiences that they extremely valued, and they probably have fonder and more vivid memories of that time in their life than they did of anything like 2, 3, 4, 5 years before that. So I realized there was something really special about that experience. I didn't really know what it was, but I figured the only way to really find out was to join the military and go experience it for myself.
So you said that the Marine Corps was the branch that you were hard set on from the beginning. Um, so you went in probably what, your junior going into senior year? What was kind of the atmosphere?
So I had to go in the Marine Corps because I had enough self-respect to like not go into any of the other branches. So I mean that was really the only option. I used to give my dad a hard time because he was in the Army, and I was like, no, I had too much self-respect to go join the Army. So I don't know, the uniforms, the slogan, like the once a Marine, always a Marine, and a lot of the other brilliant things that they do to recruit people in. They only recruit people that want to be in the Marine Corps. The recruiting process, all of the marketing, all of the branding that they do about the Marine Corps, it really, I think, weeds anybody else out. That there's not a lot of people that are like, oh, I was considering a couple brand, like I was thinking Air Force, Marine Corps, like it's everybody I know, and you can tell me if this is the same for you. Everybody I know that joined the Marines are like, yeah, that's what I was going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I was watching my buddy's podcast, Mark, Left, Right, Left, Keep It Moving is his podcast. He's out of Virginia.
Yeah.
Retired Sergeant Major, interesting guy.
Yeah.
On his own podcast. And he brought on the 16 comment on the Marine Corps, or Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, Sergeant Major Kemp.
Nice.
And he's like, you know what the recruiter did? He was a Vietnam guy. He was just like, you want to be in the Marine Corps? All right, be in the Marine Corps. I'm not going to get you with a bonus. Like, you're either the Marine Corps to be in the Marine Corps.
Yep.
Like,
that's right.
I don't want you if you don't want to be in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Like that. So.
Right. I love some of these like parody like videos that they're doing now online where that's you get like they show a guy walking into the Navy or into the Army and they're trying to dazzle him with all this stuff and all this money, and he walks in the Marine Corps recruit office. He is like, basically, you're weak, you're sad. Like if you can't do 20 pull-ups right now, get the hell out of here because you're a worthless soul. And I mean, it's funny, but I think there's a little bit of truth to that. Like
100%.
They weren't coddling me at all. They're like, yeah, if you want to do this, then show us that you can do it. Like, we're not trying to convince you to join the Marine Corps. Like, if you want to do it, then that tells us enough about who you are that you're willing to do that.
So, what year did you start getting recruited, and how did you end up choosing your original MOS?
So I was supposed. So let's see. When I was in high school, I went to high school in 9th grade in Delaware. My mom was living in Florida. 10th grade, I went to Florida. 11th grade, I went back to Delaware because I missed my friends. And then 12th grade, by 11th grade, I was like, all right, I'm kind of done with this high school thing. Like, I know I'm going to the Marines. I just want to get in the Marines. I want to hurry up and get in the Marines before I get in trouble or more trouble, and it alleviates that option for my life. So I went back to Florida and actually went to an adult high school program. It was like the local community college. You get a traditional diploma, but it's an accelerated pace, like college classes.
Okay.
So I graduated high school actually the December before. I guess I would have graduated in May of '99, and I graduated in December of '98. And I did that so I could join the Marine Corps earlier.
So you graduated '98 then?
December '98, yeah.
And then you were in boot camp, like in the spring or something?
In March. So my original contract, I was supposed to be an MP, and my dad was an MP in the Army, and I really liked that idea, and I wanted to do that. So, but to be an MP, you got to be 19 when you graduate MP school.
Wow.
So to do that, I would have to go to boot camp in August so that I'd class up at the MP school. I guess there's something about carrying a weapon every day. I don't know, because most non-rates, unless you're in the field or deploying, you're not carrying a weapon every day. So there's something about carrying a weapon in garrison. You had to be 19. I don't know.
Yeah, my best guess is probably some federal law, because you can't buy a pistol until you're 21 as a civilian.
Yeah.
So probably something to do with that. Most even local and federal law enforcement won't even recruit you before you're 21.
Yeah.
Where we're
So
from.
something along with that lines, I guess. So that I was supposed to go in August, and I called my one. I didn't know if I could go from December until August without being in high school and not get into some trouble that would keep me from going in the military. And my recruiter called and he was like, "How would you like to be a PFC when you graduate boot camp?" I was like, "That's pretty cool." So you come out as an E2, a little bit more money, like an extra $87 a month or something. I was like, "That's pretty cool. Yeah, I'll do that." I was like, "What do you need?" He was like, I need you to go like next week." And I was like, "Well, obviously, this was March." He called me. He was like, "I need you to go next." I mean, he was running. He didn't have his quota. He hadn't met his quota for the month of March. So he talked to me into doing. I had a little bit of I did well in math in high school, so I figured the only profession I knew that was math related was accounting. So I was like, well, that's kind of cool. And he knew this, so he was like, you know what you need to do? You need to be a comptroller. You need to be a fiscal budget technician because like look, every Marine you're going to do all the same field stuff. You're going to get all the training. You're going to do all that cool stuff, but then you're also going to get this marketable trade and this skill that you can use when you come out. So I bought a hook, line, and sinker for my E2, and I went off to boot camp in March. So then I spent my first employment as a combat accountant.
I always say this right now. I talked about recruiting
Yeah,
across all the branches in every podcast so far, and everybody's like, "Listen, they didn't really lie to me.
yeah,
They just didn't give me the whole truth.
that's
Nothing
right.
but the truth."
Yeah, yeah. So I guess his whole like everybody does the same stuff. He was talking about the 3 weeks of combat training at MCT, and
And Marines and riflemen too.
yeah, that's right. Yep. So I
Um,
put down my pencil and my calculator once a year, and I go to the range, and there we go. But I don't know. It worked out.
so did your first tour as basically the Marine Corps version of an accountant?
That's right.
What kind of-
Combat accountant.
combat
Come on.
accountant.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Combat accountant.
Dispersing office.
No, so in the enlisted side, there's two different MOS. One's on the comptroller side, they do budgeting, and then there's the dispersing. I think officer MOS is the same. You can be in either one.
Yeah. Okay. What happened after your first tour?
So, man, I had a plaque. I just found it in storage the other day. After my first duty station was in Okinawa. So I actually had one of the other benefits or the other things that he guaranteed me was that I'd go overseas. So I was like, I want to, that part of the reason I joined the military. I don't want to go from boot camp to Virginia right down the road from my house and spend my first enlistment there. So I got an overseas guarantee on my contract. After MOS school, the orders came out. I was supposed to go to K-Bay. And I was like, yeah, I guess it's kind of overseas, but it's still in the United States. So I was like, I don't want to go to Hawaii for my first year. Here I am sounding ridiculous. Like I'm turning down a 2-year set of orders to Hawaii. But I was like, no, man, like I want to go overseas. So they ended up working me to go to Okinawa, and I spent my first year in Camp Courtney, Okinawa. Great experience. I mean, yeah, it just kind of throw you off in the deep end and let you sink or swim. But as a young enlisted guy, I took advantage of it, and there were a few of us that would venture out of the gate and just kind of jump on the N bus and go find the local town, and that's I spent a lot of time doing that. So glad I did it.
So, when you got over there, where obviously this is pre 9/11.
Yeah.
So, what was kind of like the main mission at the time? I guess was it still counter China?
I
Was
mean,
it like
supporting Muse, I guess. I
supporting
mean, yeah, the
Muse?
Muse in the pack, and then the aviation assets and everything that we had over there.
Yeah, camp. I never was stationed in Japan. I got orders once, but
Yeah.
I was on Foster coming back through, and but I wonder at this time because it was such a low threat in the AO, we weren't really competing, with the global powers and stuff like that. Did you get to travel anywhere, do anything fun?
So not for my comptroller shop. I mean, the only time I left was, I mean, I go all the way, all around the island. I had a great Corporal Diaz that I worked with, and he had a car, so we'd go everywhere. But the only time I left the island during that tour, I had to come home for my grandmother's funeral. So my first sergeant got me on a MAC flight home and came home for that. When I went back, I had a layover in Korea, so I got to spend a day in Korea.
Yeah, that's not the requirement to get the medal. So
Right. I just ran out in town and like went to try to find a suit shop, couldn't find one. I was like, all right, I gotta get back.
Okay. What happened after your first tour, and did you lat move? What was
So yeah, great question. So I was talking about that plaque that I found. It was my Okinawa like end of tour plaque, and they
Yeah.
put on there officer wannabe. So I got promoted to corporal there, and I guess already at that point I was talking about trying to go off and join the dark side and
Oh,
get
yeah.
some get my man, something's tickling me.
Yeah, Garrett has got that good seasonal weather change about 50 times.
I've had this cough since Okinawa, so I don't know. No, I'm just kidding.
It's all service
Yeah, that's right. That's it. It's service connected. This cough. So let's see. So it said officer wannabe. So even at that point, I was talking about going off and joining the military. My first sergeant at the time, who promoted me meritorious corporal, he was trying to talk me into go to the Naval Academy because he was a gunny at the Naval Academy before he came out to Okinawa. He couldn't convince me that I wanted to go. Like after being an NCO in the fleet, that I wanted to go back to the Naval Academy and be a and do that whole experience. But he also told me about MECEP. So that's where I learned about that and started putting a package together even before I left the island,
I think. This would have been what, like 02?
So 99. No, it was a 1 year tour. So 1 year unaccompanied for a young enlisted. So that was 99 to 2000. Yep, that's when they had a lot of was it PCS money, so they could send you out there for a 1 year tour. And then I came back to headquarters Marine Corps, and I was at Henderson Hall from December 2000 until I went off to MECEP prep school. So that was it. Yeah.
What college did you end up getting?
University of Maryland. So I was accepted to the MECEP program so it's a Marine. Is it meritorious or Marine? Meritorious Marine Enlisted Commissioning and Education Program.
Yeah.
And it's one of the pathways that an enlisted person can get a commission. So I applied to that program, put in a good package. I mean, a couple thousand people, I think, apply to it every year. They select about 100. So I got selected to that program. I'd also at the time applied to 4 schools that I wanted to go to. I graduated high school in Florida, so I applied to Florida State. And I was going to community college in Virginia because I was stationed back at Henderson Hall. So I applied to Virginia and Virginia Tech. Well, they all told me no. So here I was, like I had an acceptance from the Marine Corps, pretty much writing me a blank check for 4 years to go get a college degree. But I had like 2 weeks till I had to show them that I was accepted to a university. So I put all my bravos and I drove up to University of Maryland, which is like an hour north of where I was stationed in DC, and went into the bursar's office and I told her, I was like, look, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to study. This is the program I've got. This is what the Marine Corps is going to do. And she was like, yeah, everything in your application looks great. I think, I don't see any concern with you getting in. I'm sure that you'd be accepted. I said, awesome. I appreciate that. And here's the thing, like I need to show them a letter of acceptance to the university within like 3 weeks or they're going to cank me from this program. And she was like, give me a minute. She went back to her office. She typed up like a bogus acceptance letter on the University of Maryland letterhead, came back and handed it to me. So I sent that off to the Marines. And then a couple of weeks later, I got my official acceptance.
Yeah, I only did a little bit of college while I was in. I wasn't really interested. I loved being enlisted.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. So how was your time at the University of Maryland and what did you study?
So I studied mechanical engineering. At that point, I'd learned that there was other professions and degrees that used a lot of math and just accounting. So I studied mechanical engineering, and I mean, I don't know. I was on the my friends at the time, we said there's like the happy side of campus where everybody's studying like philosophy and communication stuff, and then there's the other side of campus. So they put like the physics building, the engineering building, the math building all in one little corner on the campus. So that's basically where I spent 4 years. Had a lot of fun. I mean, it was a good time. I was 21 when I got there, and I was making sergeant pay with DC BAH, which was like $1,800 a month or something. So yeah, I had a lot of time and a lot of freedom, I guess. So one of the things with the MECEP program, you got to be attached to a ROTC unit. My ROTC unit was in George Washington. So we're 45 minutes north. So there's like 7 MECEP students up there, kind of out of sight, out of mind. So once a week we'd go to drill down in DC. But for the rest of it, it's, as long as you're getting good grades and staying in shape, then they kind of left us alone, which, yeah. So it was interesting. It was a good time. Yeah, certainly partied a lot. By that time, I'd had enough time in the Marines and I had enough discipline that like when it was time to get down and study, like I'd get down and study. So I did pretty well in my engineering degree, even though I probably skipped 20-30% of my classes, because I learned that I can go either sleep in, I can go to the bar and like have a nice lunch and stay there for a couple of hours and skip the lectures and then just kind of grind it out in the books in the library before the test, and I do okay. So for all the engineering classes and stuff, I mean, it was when I had to go over and take some of the philosophy stuff that was a little bit more challenging, but.
Which is funny because now you're more into philosophy.
Yeah,
you definitely are engineering. Um, all right. So fast forward, you graduate from the University of Maryland. What's kind of the next steps in your Marine Corps career?
Yeah, so
How did you?
when I was a junior, so I had always had this fascination with flying. So I remember being in like seventh grade in my friend's backyard and looking up and like seeing planes or seeing flashing lights and just trying to imagine like how cool that would be or what that would be like to be in a small plane flying around at night, just like the freedom of that and everything. So and anytime anytime after that, planes would fly over. Like I always kind of had this fascination with it. Um, but I also thought because of the accident I had when I was 10 years old and the brain surgery that I had, that I wouldn't be physically qualified, that they wouldn't accept me in the flight program. So 11th grade comes around, I'm studying engineering. Some of the guys are talking about, I'm going off and trying to do the aviation. I was like, what's going to hurt? I mean, put in my package. We'll see what happens. If they say no, then, I've got another path to go. And if they say yes, well, then that's great. So I submitted my package. They sent me through like a whole battery of tests, MRIs and CAT scans, neurological evals and everything. And they ended up offering me a flight package. So when I graduated at University of Maryland, in May, they held me back until like I just went to the ROTC unit every day, and they held me back, and then I went to the basic school in like August, September. So we started and went through the kind of the cold months, and
Where's the
that's
basis
in
of?
Quantico, Virginia,
Okay. Yeah, I
and
know.
then off to flight school, years of flight school. So
Yeah, so I know some pilots and people who became pilots. There's a lot
yeah,
of dwell period because there was like they overbooked the classes. So what'd you do? So you were basically like commissioned, waiting to go to
that's right.
school. How long did you have to wait for?
So I graduated in May. Maybe I went in December.
It's crazy. Six
Yeah, because
months.
we graduated in July. So 6 months. We graduated July. So it was probably like December that we went
Yeah, I knew a guy
and checked in.
who was like on the waiting
So
list
it
for
was a
like
lot
a
of
year.
months. Yeah,
It's
a lot of good
change.
pay to not really do anything. So just hanging out a lot. I would go down and PT with the AMO like 3 days a week. So I was getting in really good shape, running a whole lot, and we'd do like pack runs and stuff. We'd actually go down to Quantico and run the trails with packs on just to condition a bit. So yeah, just kind of waited around. One of the things I had to do, you have to go. So if you're on a flight contract, this is one of the. There's a lot of questionably intelligent things that the military does. One of the things, like sending enlisted guys to school for 4 years. So for 4 years, I'm racking up active duty time and I'm getting paid, but in my eyes, not really providing a whole lot of value back to the military. So my final retirement, I had 16 and a half years. 4 of it was spent at the University of Maryland.
Yeah.
That counted towards my retirement time. So between graduating and getting your commission and going off to flight school before they're going to send the money to PCS you down to flight school in Pensacola, they send you and I'm guessing they're still doing this. They send you to IFS, or Introductory Flight School. Basically, they take the civilian syllabus for getting your private pilot's license, and which you would normally have 25 or 30 hours to gain the proficiency in the airplane to be able to do the maneuvers and everything you need to do to manipulate the aircraft. You have to do it in like 10 hours. So basically, they're just trying to screen out to make sure that you're going to be able to learn and apply the things quickly enough to make it through flight school. Because if you can't do that, then it's a pretty good sign you're not going to make it through the military flight school. So they can send guys to the local flight school, pay, I don't know, a few $1,000s to have them go through a flight training in a Cessna 172 that costs, $80 an hour to operate at the time, instead of flying you down there, putting you in a turboprop that's thousands of dollars an hour to operate. So yeah, I think pretty smart move. So that was one of the things I had to do in the meantime.
So I always kind of wondered. I know that it's like spatial recognition, be able to be aware of like space going on around you and stuff like that, and obviously having high aptitude. But what are some like the qualifying requirements for somebody who wants to be a pilot?
Yeah, I think physical qualification, you do have to take it's not an ASVAB. There's another test that you take for aviation. I can't remember the acronym for it, but there's a lot of spatial recognition stuff in there, some basic engineering questions and stuff, just to make sure that you have like high GT. But they also would put different pictures of what it would look like through an aircraft windshield and like different orientations, like left bank, right bank, and they'd ask like, what way are you going, or what way would you need to turn in order to do this? So like looking from all different directions just to see like if you have that spatial recognition. So I don't remember it being very hard. I mean, there's only it's essentially like pass or fail. I think the scoring's like out of 6 or something. You gotta get like a 5 or a 6, and you're cleared. And then one of the first things you do when you get to Pensacola before you even start the real flight training, you go through aviation pre-flight indoc, which was a number of weeks, 6 8 weeks maybe, where they do a lot of the swim fizz stuff, and put you through the. I think it's the first time you go through the dunk tank. You do like the mile swim in your flight suit, and they run you in the spin and puke. So like the centrifugal. Yeah, there's some fun videos of people on that. Just to make sure physiologically that you're that everything's working right. You're not, you don't black out or gray out too early.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, concussions.
And then we do redneck parasailing, which have you ever heard of redneck parasailing?
No.
Yeah. So another thing, I guess, to save money, instead of taking everybody up in planes, so go through API, the first plane that you flew, you have to wear a parachute. So they have to put you through some parachute training. So it's a lot of time that you spend jumping off a 6-foot platform, trying to land right so you don't snap your ankles and break your knees every time you land. So a whole lot of repetitions of that, just like the old adage in the McMap program, like 1,000 repetitions, you call it your own. So doing a lot of that, and then just making sure that you know how to fall properly. And then they would take us out, and instead of taking everybody up in a plane and letting them do a jump, they would just take us out behind a pickup truck in Alabama, and the pickup truck would run you up on a basically parasailing, and they'd take you up like 200 feet, and then the stop, so you could see what the experience was like to fall that last 200 feet under canopy. Yeah, so good time. Again, like saving a little bit of money. They don't have to run a boat out there. It's a lot easier to do that, and you get the repetitions a lot more quickly. But it must look hilarious watching all these people do this.
It's wild to think about that they just didn't send you guys to jump school because they were like, well, they might fell out, and if they fell out, we just wasted a jump slot probably for their dick.
That's right. So. Yeah. And they're not expecting that we're going to be doing multiple. Like if you go to jump school, it's probably because you have an MOS or you're going to be doing something where you're going to have to jump multiple times. They're figuring like if we're coming under canopy, it's probably going to be one time in our career at most.
Yeah.
And then things probably went really, really bad. You might not be flying again anyway.
I don't think this is classified now, so I'm probably going to talk about it.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. We had some of our partner force on my first deployment, and it's a 500-pound, good boom things attached to it, and it caught on fire.
Oh wow!
And the dude ejected on a ship because he had to launch from ships. People don't understand.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget this. We're like right underneath the flight deck, like looking on the cameras towards the. Oh, we're dead. We might as well not run. Like, this is right. The ship.
Sure. I'm gonna die here. I'm gonna die 10 feet that way.
And then we didn't move until the MAs came. The Master Barnes came through, and they're like, "Get into your berths right now, to the quarters." They're like, "Oh my god, what the fuck?" But I think that's funny now because I'll never forget him coming out and his chute because he ejected. His chute opened up to him on the boat.
Yeah.
And you could just imagine the fear in this guy's eyes because he caught on fire. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Our rescue went out there and the whole night was wild. So they ended up having the IG come down and the whole night thing. That was 2015.
Yeah. About those 500-pound bombs. One of the things, like, it blew my mind, and I know this has been going on for a long time, so I can't imagine how many are out there. I don't know. Maybe this is classified, so we won't talk about it. All right. We'll talk about it offline. You can tell me. But interesting story. So we do something with those 500-pound bombs that blows my mind that we do that, and it's like regular that we. Yeah. So all right, we'll talk about
it. Yeah. Okay. So you go through. So how'd you go for flight school? How'd you end up with your platform?
So that's funny. So when I got my flight package, I was so excited, and then like minutes later, this terror comes across me, and I'm like, I love the C-130. Like, such an awesome platform. Everything I know about it, like its capability, the long range stuff that it can do. It's one of the few platforms that now it can do every aviation mission that there is, and on one platform, from close air support to cargo to aerial refueling, battlefield illumination, transport, obviously. And I think that's pretty cool. And I think it's pretty cool to like jump in an aircraft with your best buds, 5 or 6 other Marines, and then just go off do a mission. Whether it's flying some stuff out to California, you're spending a couple of days and then flying back. Like, that really excited me. I mean, the idea of sitting by myself in a small little platform and like just kind of being a one-man show, I don't know, it didn't really excite me that much. So I was really excited that I got the flight contract, and then I was like, oh crap, the only thing I want to fly is the C-130, and that's not a guarantee. Like 15% of aviators get the C-130.
Yeah.
And some weeks, if you graduate primary flight school, so you go to primary flight school, they grade you on everything, and then you put in your top 4 choices, whether you want to do tilt rotor, maritime, jets, or helos, and you rank it, and then they just basically look at who graduated first, all right, what's his number 1 choice. So some weeks there's not even a C-130 slot available, and when I graduated primary for like the 8 weeks before that, there hadn't been a C-130 spot. So here I am, like, sweating it the whole time. Everybody at Whiting Field in Pensacola. So Whiting Field's where they do primary. Everybody there that I could talk to, I was like, "Hi, I'm Garret. I want to C-130 pilot." So like I made sure that everybody knew what it was, um, and anything I could do to kind of like gain my chances to try to do it. And that's what I did. And then the afternoon, it was like a Friday afternoon. They sit everybody around, like the 6 or 8 guys that just went through, guys and gals that just went through flight school, and they tell you what your platform's going to be. And they told me what mine was, and I was like so stressed, I like blacked out for a second. I was like, I had to ask the guy next to me, like, what did they say? What I get? What I get? Like as they kept going around, I was like, I think I heard C-130s, but I might have hallucinated it. And sure enough, so I got C-130s.
So this is at the time you were doing C-130 regular, and the Juliet came out afterwards, right?
No, when I went through primary, so you go through after primary, everybody flew the T-34. Now they all fly the T-6, and then they select what platform you're going to. And then I went off and flew maritime or multi-engine out in Texas. But at the time, even at that time, all the C-130s for the fleet units were J models.
Already?
Yeah,
that's actually pretty cool.
I think the reserves both had the legacy C-130s at the time. Now they've all transitioned as well to the J's. So when I went through C-130 training, my initial was all for the J.
Yeah, I always get real excited when I was flying to use the C-130 Juliet versus the regular C-130.
Yeah,
because it's bigger.
Yeah.
The only thing that made me nervous is how the structure of the aircraft and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Stressed, and I would always get super nervous because I was a log guy. I'd be like, "Fuck, I'm loaded a J." I'm like excited,
Yeah.
because they get a bigger aircraft and more space.
Yeah, those things are quick too. Yeah, I never flew one of the legacy ones, so I don't know how the size. I thought the airframe was the exact same size. They just swapped out the engines and all the avionics.
You got an extra cargo space and height a little bit. It was a little bit longer.
Oh yeah, cool. Because I know the Air Force, they have the supers and they have a whole extra pallet position.
Yeah.
But the difference is like the amount of power that they have is the same. So there's actually better performance on the J models without the JATO rockets than there was on the legacy models with the JATO rockets. So they haven't used JATO rockets in the fleet for a long time, but those are the jet packs or the rocket packs that they strap to the side of the C-130 so you can do a short takeoff.
Yeah.
Like the Blue Angels were using for a while. They still use a modified version for simulation. But
okay. So what how long was school for you down in Texas?
2 years, yeah. So between API, primary flight school, and advanced flight school, it was, so I graduated TBS in July of 2007 and then flight school in February 2009. So 18 months, 19 months.
What obviously you came in before 9/11. You commissioned, went through college, and then you ended up basically in between both pushing out Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah.
What was kind of the mindset?
Yeah, so it was a really interesting play. I mean, from day one, like a boot camp, all you're thinking about is like, when's the first time I'm going down range? Like, what's the first thing that's going to happen? And we weren't even really doing much in '99 when I went through boot camp, but still, that's kind of in your mind. I mean, you train and train, looking for your first deployment. So it was really interesting because I went off to MESET right after 9/11. So I went in May of 2002. That's when I left and went to MESET prep school. No, I'm sorry. I graduated now. So, I was stationed in DC during 9/11, and then that was 2001. Yeah, 2002. Yeah, because I graduated college in 2006. So 2002, that's when I went to prep school. So it was really interesting because like from that point, you're like, all right, well, I want to hurry up and graduate high school or college rather. I want to get back to the fleet. Like I had friends that I was in MESEP with that they started taking like 19 credit semesters because they wanted to, like, they're like, we got to get, it's like game on. Like I need to get to this thing. So they want to graduate a year earlier, or 18 months earlier, or however they could do it. So it was, it was an interesting time because I knew at that point or towards the end of college, I knew I was going to flight school, and I know that's a long process. So it wasn't until my first deployment was in 2011. So 10 years later. So the whole time you're thinking like, all right, I'm trying to be here, trying to be present, trying to learn everything I can so that when I do go, I can serve the Marine Corps, in the best way. But it's also, there's that like internal tension between how much longer do I got to wait to go, and how much longer do I have to, not to glamorize war or anything, but when that's what you train for all the time, like you want to do something. You want to make that contribution.
Yeah, that's one thing that I'm sure people don't understand is like for I was talking to Paul. He got the ring around too, trying to get into units, and everybody they go commission. It's like it takes you away from the fleet. It takes you away from everything for years, and especially like in your crew, Phil, you end up being a pilot. It's like that's years of schooling. That's not like you go for maybe 6 months or a year extra after you graduate college and go train TBS and all that stuff. Like you're gone for years to become proficient pilot.
That's right.
So because they're spending millions of dollars to train you, and they want to make sure that you're not going to take down $100 million aircraft. So
absolutely. Now, I mean, now that I'm in my 40s, looking back at it, I cannot believe that, I was in my mid 20s and they tossed me the keys to a C-130 with a couple of other guys. They like, go fly this thing around. But to talk about how long it takes, I got promoted to captain the same day that I finished my C-130, like first check ride, first NATOPS check. So that's how long it took, even from the day to commission until I was fully qualified and signed off and ready to get back, into fleet operations.
It's pretty wild because you had a payback tour for them sending you to college like
that's
that
right,
too.
Yeah.
You do almost all of it, going through all your training and stuff like that.
That's why they extend it. So for the pilots, so for MECEP at the time, I don't know what it is now. At MECEP, you had a 4-year buyback. So you go to college and you get another MOS, and you have to do at least 4 years as an officer. If you were at the time, if you were helicopters and maritime, it was a 6-year buyback because they want to account for the extra 2 years of flight school. And if you're a jet pilot, it was 8 years. 8 years is your buyback.
Wild.
Yeah. So at that point, it's like I'd been 6 years in, and then like 6 more years of my buyback. It's like I'm at 12. Yeah.
So when did you hit the fleet finally after your school?
So 2010. Really, like that's when I was fully qualified to do my MOS as a 7556, so a co-pilot, C-130 co-pilot. In it was like October of 2010.
And then what unit did you check into? What was
VMGR 252. So a PCS here for the C-130 platform training, and then my first duty station was here as well. So VMGR 252 is at Cherry Point. That was my only C-130 squadron. So it was my first C-130 squadron. That's where I deployed from in support of them.
As something we were talking about before I got out was like the talent management stuff in the Marine Corps, and how aviation kind of always did it. They would allow people to kind of homestead, especially like the aviation maintenance and supply and chain pilots, stuff like that. Like, we're not going to uproot these guys. We want them to stay in. We don't mess with them, especially they just now get comfortable, get used to flying with these crews, get used to the hours and all this sort of stuff, and like you move them in 2 years, it's like it doesn't make any sense. It never had made any sense. So I'm glad that the Marine Corps starting like the GC.
Well, around that time too, so around 2000 and when I got out in 15, so around 13, 14, when we started to draw down the forces, and we're not sure what that. They also run out a lot of money. Like they're running out of PCS money. They're like, man, we're burning cash, like moving people everywhere. So they were a lot, the monitors at that time were a lot more amenable to like, all right, let me find you something down the street. So you don't have to go too far. So after my C-130 tour in August of 13, I got back from Afghanistan, immediately PCA'd over to VMU2 and spent 2 years there. So that was nice. It was on the same base, other side of the flight line, didn't have to move.
Were you over there as like the fires officer or something?
So over as a, I don't remember how much about that tour, honestly. So I mean, it was a pilot. The VMU, the UAS is operated by the enlisted, but they still have a pilot that's man, I can't remember. I had that MOS for a little while. I can't remember what the acronym was, what they call it. But
yeah.
Basically, you stand behind the guy that's at the controls and you work the radios, is what I remember.
Yeah, kind of like fires officer.
Yeah,
more or less. Yeah, you're the one making sure that
I'm the one that's going down if something happens.
Yeah. You make sure the DC understands what's going on.
That's
basically.
right. Yeah.
So, all right. So you did one pump to Afghanistan in 2011, and then
so my Afghan was in 2013. In 2011, I was in support of the MU. So we were doing operations in Libya. So it was the 2-2 MU, and at the time they were in the Mediterranean supporting operations in Libya.
That's right.
So the other awesome thing about a C-130, you can't land that thing on a ship. So what you do is you pick a NATO base that's pretty cool, that's nearby wherever the operations are. So we parked in Sigonella in Sicily, and just whenever they needed us to do something. And it was usually like, hey, we need you to go pick up some cargo in Rota and fly that back to us. So we'd fly over to Spain. We'd time it so that we'd have to have a down day in Spain and spend a day in Spain, then pick up some cargo and fly it back to Signalia or over to Suda Bay. So that was a pretty awesome tour. I got to see a lot of cool places in Europe.
So you did two twins then? Was that it?
Yeah, and a real a small one in support of us, SP MagTaff. That was again we were in Sicily. We parked a couple of birds in Sicily, and then we'd fly around. Did a couple flights into Africa to drop off some small units. I don't know what they were doing down there, but
yeah, they're probably Somali, right?
Yeah. So Burundi and Uganda, and I'm sure that there are other missions. Mauritania, we had to take some guys over to Mauritania. So I don't know what they were doing, but we'd drop off. We'd like a couple sergeants that like show up, and they'd get on the plane with their duffel bag or their sea bag, and then we go drop them off, and they'd have somebody like, all right, be here in 60 days, and somebody will be here to pick you up.
Yeah, it's special operations right there. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so heading towards the end of the tenure in your active duty service, what was the mindset? Because you got out at 16, so you did like the early
the Terra.
Yep,
Terra. So I mean, one of the hardest decisions, probably the hardest decision I made while I was in the military was taking that Terra or applying for it. So Terra is a temporary early relief or retirement authority. So there's a law in Congress, and this is at any time they can activate it, where they let people retire with less than 20 years from the military, and they do it after major conflicts when they're trying to shrink the size of the military. So I remember sitting out on the flight line. Again, I'm on the other side of the flight line now at VMU2, and I'm sitting there and I'm watching C-130s taking off and doing touch and goes. And I was like, do I give up my opportunity to go back and fly that one more time? And, when you're active duty in the military, they own you, they can send you wherever you want. And there was, I felt there was too great of a chance that there was maybe a 50-50 chance I get to go back and fly another, tour with the C-130s and then twilight out of there. Also a pretty good chance that they'd send me on an IA for a year, send me to EWS, even though I was EWS complete. Maybe they sent me to Quantico to do the 10-month resident EWS. So too many variables. All right.
Yeah, I always found it pretty interesting how they invest a lot of time into these pilots.
Yeah.
Like years and years and years, and then you get like one unit, and they send you back to school for like another 3 years.
Yeah.
And you come back, and they might send you on like an IA somewhere, or send you go be an instructor, or
Right.
send you to be like an XO, and you're not flying anymore.
Yeah.
And you come back from that, and now you're like in the spot. You become like an OPSO or like a fucking controls officer or flyers officer, some random unit deploying, and like you get like 2 years, and you might keep your quals, but like you end up not being able to actually.
That's right. Yeah, and you got to go through a long training syllabus when you get back to it. Yeah, I don't know. It seems like unless you're being a fact, like I get the advantage and the benefits of that, like having attack pilots on the ground or that can talk to aircraft in the sky. I get that. I get sending somebody to flight school because you got to be a pilot, be an instructor down there. But otherwise, it seems a little silly. Like, oh, we're going to send you off to do OSO duty for 3 years, and then you'll come back. So, yeah. But I don't know. There's greater wisdom of the benefits of that, I guess, somewhere.
Okay, so you just.
So here we go. Yeah. So I'm standing here on the flight line, I'm watching these C-130s doing these touch and goes. And honestly, I was like, the draw to do that again, at this point, it feels like almost like an indulgence, or there's something else I should be doing in my life. And if I was to go do that, it was only for fun and only for like personal fulfillment. And I felt like there was a little bit of a conflict there. So yeah, there were some unknown variables and everything, but finally I came to the decision that, if the Terra comes out for my MOS, I'm gonna apply for it. Also, my ex-wife and I were together at the time. We're kind of on the last legs and knew that we're heading towards divorce. And I knew that she was going to be staying in the area. So again, if I'm staying in the Marine Corps and they deploy me or they send me anywhere, like I'm leaving my 4-year-old daughter at the time behind. If they send me down to flight school to be a flight instructor, which is pretty easy gig to get if you want to do it. It can be a career ender for some people because then you're spending 3 years away from the fleet and you're doing something, even though you're getting a lot of flight time. But me as a Mustang, like I don't care. I'm not trying to pick up lieutenant colonel. I wasn't trying to go on and do do a higher level command. So it would be perfect for me. But that would mean voluntarily moving away from Cherry Point and New Bern and being away from my daughter. So all of those things considered, I decided, and I remember standing there like with tears in my eyes, looking at C-130. It's like, I love that thing so much, and I love being on that, and love operating, love flying so much. It was such a hard decision to make, to like voluntarily go another route and end that chapter of my life. So I knew that they were offering the Terra to some MOSs, and like every month the MAR admin would come out and they'd list some new MOSs, um, and everybody else thought I was crazy. But lo and behold, a MAR admin came out and it said the 7557 was available for Terra or eligible for Terra. So I'd already had my package and everything like in my drawer. So I pulled it out, routed it up the chain, and and it was funny. After I routed up and sent it to headquarters Marine Corps, I was I was almost. I was a little put back or put off by how quickly they came back and said, "Yeah."
Accept it.
I was like, "Hold on, like we're not even gonna have a conversation about this. Like, how much do you not value me? Like, I thought I made a good contribution here. It's like we're not even gonna talk." And but just I got a letter back. It felt like maybe 2 weeks later, and they're like, "All right, here's your retirement date. Thanks for your service."
Yeah, Paul, obviously, my last interviewee, you talk about it like how, hey, it's like when it's your time to go,
Yeah.
they're gonna respect your decision eventually. Especially if you weren't a piece of shit, they'll be like, all right, I mean,
Yeah.
you got business to take care of, like you're gonna be successful.
Mhm.
Hey, you got a plan. You're out.
Yeah.
You belong to the civilian world now. Congratulations, but it's not our job to babysit you no
Right.
more. So you
That's
made
right.
that decision. Boom, you're gone. That's
Yeah,
how they look at it.
that's it.
So
And I talked to my CO at the time, Colonel Bolden, and he was like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And he was trying to talk me into staying because he valued the contribution I was making, and we hit it off. And I was like, "Look, like I don't know how to describe it other than like I've lost something, and I know there's another Marine that could probably make a better contribution than what I'm making. So it's really a right thing for me to do for the Marine Corps to step out of the way, let somebody else do it."
So I guess we're going to transition into kind of the next walks, and when you've obviously decided because of conflicts and the Marine Corps doesn't quite do talent management, in my opinion, correctly. You've decided, hey, it's time for me to exit. I did my years of service and take the Terror. But before you got out, we're going to get into your first nonprofit and kind of discuss how you ended up starting the 1 million Go.
Yeah. So. Yeah, in 2011, I was deployed with a guy, Brandon Gelati, and I think he lives back here now. I think I bumped into him not too long ago. Great dude. He was a crew chief that I was deployed with, and this was during our MU deployment. We spent some time in Sicily, and then we went down to Djibouti, and we were there for a couple of months. So lots of long hours just waiting to be sent out on a mission. And what he was doing a lot to kill the time was he was making patches and T-shirts and selling it for some reason. He told us he was selling it for some cause or to support some cause. Well, come to find out, talking to him, he was sending money back to his buddy who had started a little water nonprofit in Georgia. So through conversations I was having with him, I started learning how big the global water crisis is. There's about 1 billion people in the world that don't have access to clean drinking water. About half of the hospital beds around the world are filled with people because of water-related illnesses. Almost 35,000 people die every single week just because of something related with not having access to clean water. So when I realized this, it really kind of shocked me how big of an issue it was. And one of the things, some of the flying I was doing, of course, I got to fly to some beautiful places, landing in Naples or Aviano, Italy. But we also got to fly to some shitholes around the world where everybody's, very destitute. Everybody is really struggling to survive, living in piles of trash. They make some kind of hut out of piles of trash. So I also got to see how impoverished some pockets are of the world. And I guess through these conversations and through what I started learning about the water crisis, like there's a lot more of the world that lives like that than I ever would have imagined. So I became interested in it and started supporting that cause a little bit. Started making some contributions to some water nonprofits or people that were doing missions trying to provide water to people. And I remember very specifically there was this one time. So a couple things I was reading. It was just kind of making some recommendations about our service work, our philanthropic work. If there's anything that we want to make a contribution to, the advice was to make a contribution to one thing, kind of like, pull your time, energy, and efforts together to contribute to one cause that means the most to you, like where you feel the greatest sense of reward or return. For some people, it's working with pets. For some people, it's providing education to underprivileged youth. For a lot of people, it's the water crisis, and that's really what resonated a lot with me. it was one month in particular where I remember kind of sitting down doing my budgeting because I was, that good combat accountant training and background. So I was sitting down doing my budgeting, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna make a donation to a nonprofit this month. It was $50, $100 or something, and I was like, where do I want to make this donation to? And I was like, all right, so I remember I was looking at like there's St. Jude's, who I donated to before, and I love the work that they do. And then I was like, oh, there's this other water nonprofit, it's called Charity Water. Well, I kind of came to this conclusion. I was like, all right, well, Charity Water, they're saying for $30 they can provide water to somebody for a lifetime. At an average of $30, they can fund a well project for a village or something. Whereas $100 off the St. Jude's, they're doing great work. But $100, that's going to disappear, and they're like coffers of research and development money. And I'm sure it's going to do good, but I don't know what good it's going to do or how it's going to impact. So I was like, that's interesting. I want to give some money to Charity Water. And then I learned, and through the nonprofit stuff I've done, I've learned a lot about the philosophy or mindset behind doing some nonprofit stuff. And Charity Water has been really revolutionary and influenced a lot of things in the nonprofit world. And so I started my interactions with them. I started to learn some things from them on how they're so effective. I don't know what their numbers are up to now, but at the time they'd helped like 4 million people around the world get access to water, funded projects in 19 different countries. I'm sure by now they've expanded. One of the things that made them so successful is they make it so easy to get money from donors, and then also excite donors to help get more money from donors, peers, or donors networks. And my first exposure to that was I would make a donation, and then they'd empower you by creating your own like donation page, so that then you can invite your friends and family or whatever to make a donation to the certain thing. Now, there's a lot of other nonprofits that are doing similar things to this now. I mean, this was really before crowdfunding became as popular as it is. But I was like, this is awesome. So not only is this organization getting my $100 or whatever it was, but they've empowered me to now collect thousands of dollars by tapping into my network. So I thought that was brilliant. It really excited me. So I experimented with that. And the first time I did a fundraiser, I started my little campaign page. They make like your own little, you put your little story in there and your picture, and then you have a link to send out to everybody that you want to connect with. So I just did a couple social media posts and a couple of emails. We ended up raising $7,332 in like 90 days. I was like, dude, this is awesome. Like, this is so easy. I'll do this all day long. I don't think I've had a social media campaign as successful as that one, but it really got me excited about not only can I help 3 people with $100 that I'm gonna donate, but now with $7,300, like how many lives did I just affect? I was like, this is awesome. Not only can I make good, do some good in the world, but I can be a conduit, and I can help empower other people to feel the same way that I felt and do good in the world. So all this was happening around like 2013, 2014. And then that's what I said at the end of that, the end of 2014, I decided I really like this mission, this effort, and I want to kind of codify that into one organization so that I can continue this effort and help other organizations that are doing the water stuff.
So, for your organization and the choices that you end up making, so you were kind of participating in this this water charity, raising money for them, right? As just a sponsor, more or less, an ambassador for the brand. They don't even know who you are, really, probably. And then you end up creating your own 501c.
Yeah.
So how was
that was a funny process, but it's easy to do, but easy enough, I guess. So and where I kind of came up with this name and how serious I was getting. So as I said, I was getting advice to like, all right, just find one thing that you're passionate about and like kind of pull your efforts into that. And then because the benefit is like before that, I consider myself like a serial giver. Every month I'd try to give 50, $100 something to a different nonprofit, but it was more like who's on the top of the stack of requests, or who just came to me and asked for money. So I was giving money to a lot of different things, a little bit of money to a lot of different things. And I really like this idea of like, let's pull the efforts together and like just focus on one cause, because then you can feel like, the $100 here, $50 there, like I'm sure I was making impact, but I don't know what kind of impact. Whereas if kind of funneling that or focusing that on one thing, then you can really get a greater sense of impact that you're making overall, and feel a greater return on it. So one of the books, maybe we'll talk about this later, I wrote a book called Charity, The Gifts of Giving. And I talk about all the benefits that we get as individuals when we do something good for somebody else. And I found that if you are contributing to or giving to a cause that you're most passionate about, then you're going to get the greatest emotional return, physiological return yourself, which then excites you or empowers you to do more. So that's kind of one thing that really helps people get more excited about the contribution that they're making. So I knew that water was something I wanted to focus a lot of time and energy on. I started doing some life planning and just kind of visioning of what my life would be after the military. And I was setting some, some goals of things that I wanted to do and achieve. And I came to like the philanthropical area of my life, or the impact area of my life, the service area. And I decided that I wanted to help 1 million people get access to clean drinking water. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but it's a big enough goal that I can spend the rest of my life working on it. And I think helping 1 million out of the billion people, like, for one individual or one organization, that's a sizable enough impact to be, to be proud of and to be worthy of that time and attention. So then I was like, all right, what's my nonprofit name going to be? All right, it's going to be 1 million goal, because that's that's kind of the story behind where the inspiration came from. So getting out of the military, I was deciding that, all right, let me codify this effort. So I'd done some work with Charity Water. I'd also done some work with some other organizations, but I like the idea that I can be a voice for the cause and for the mission, use that to help raise money, but not necessarily take on the burden of getting the water to somebody that's in need. So one time I sat down and I looked at all the different things that are involved between idea and intention and actually getting clean drinking water to somebody that doesn't have it. Maybe there's 15 or 16 different things between like site selection and international relations and logistics and all the different things that you need to actually put water in somebody's hand. And there's two things: one is fundraising, and one's raising awareness. So just going out and talking about it, and then helping inspire people to make a contribution. I was like, what if I just focus on these two things, and then synergistically together with my efforts and 1 million goal and other organizations that are trying to provide water, now we can come together and make a greater impact than either one of us could make on our own. So there's a lot of people, there's a lot of churches, a lot of organizations. Everybody's trying to help people get water. There's a lot of organizations trying to help people get water. Why duplicate what somebody else is doing if I can just narrow it on one little niche and try to make the greatest impact that I can? So for anybody that's thinking about doing nonprofit stuff, that's some of the advice I always give is find out what you're most excited about or most passionate about, and just focus on that element of it and figure out how you can use that thing, that skill set that you have, that talent that you have, in order to make a bigger impact. So I was excited about water, but that doesn't mean I need to figure out all that other stuff on the list in order to help. I already realized that I can send out some emails, I can do some social media posts, I can show up and speak at a church, and those things that I'm already comfortable doing and like doing and want to do more of can help the global water crisis at a greater scale, because now another organization doesn't have to do those things. Somebody else can be the expert in doing logistics or doing the community engagement piece of it.
So that was what my question was going to be next with the organization. So your construct is to do fundraising and awareness, but you also do travel abroad sometimes and do travel to these locations and assist with logistics, transportation, setting up equipment, cases.
That's right.
Can you kind of explain that portion of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're starting out, we were funding well projects mainly through Charity Water, through some other organizations. And I got to get back and tell you about creating the 501c3. So don't let me forget about that. All right. So I started out, just like telling stories, talking to people. And that's another thing I tell people: if they want to make an impact, but they're like, I don't have the time, I don't have the money, there's something I want to support, but I don't know how to do it, just start out doing something simple. So I learned about the water crisis, and this whole organization came to be because I was sitting, by a fire having some chats with the dude about water. So by him sharing that, I learned about it. So you never know, a conversation that you have with somebody while you're waiting to buy a cup of coffee, or having a conversation with a friend, you never know that that's going to inspire and what kind of impact's going to come from that. So this conversation that me and Brandon has had a $60,000-$70,000 impact and helped 12,000 people get access to water. He didn't know where that was going to go. So we never know where those ripples that we're going to create. I was on a train of thought there. I don't know where it went, but yeah. So just kind of get started and do something and share a story. So there's a lot of value that can be had in just sharing a message, and that's what I'd already realized. Sending out a handful of emails and writing and doing a couple of posts on Facebook, and I was able to raise almost $7,500. Let me focus on that element of it, and that's really where I wanted to focus. And then in 2017, one of the first organizations that I supported, they gave him an opportunity to come along with them to go to Nicaragua. So I was like, all right, I realized that, as I envisioned this nonprofit, that's really not what our mission was. Like at that time, we had funded 11 or 12 well projects in Africa and helped fund some other trips for other organizations. But of course I was interested. Of course I wanted to go and see what it was all about. And I realized that by going and seeing it firsthand, it was going to help me come back and tell better stories and raise better awareness, come back with my own pictures and show me doing the work. So I kind of justified. I was like, all right, well, I'll step out of this, this mission, this little mission of just raising awareness and fundraising. And then from there it kind of grew. So now it's a balance. Like now we do our own trips. We haven't been since 2022, I believe, was our last trip. Um, and then so yeah, now it's a little bit of a blended too. So we've been to Nicaragua, Guatemala. We're looking at going back to Guatemala, maybe Belize, and maybe Peru. With now we've partnered with another kind of operational organization to kind of do the
You can
operational
plug
thing.
them, whoever it is.
Yeah, so Veterans Without Orders, started by John Nonamaker. Great organization. He was a Army Civil Affairs officer. Very comfortable with going into communities, organizations, finding key leaders, finding needs, doing needs assessments and everything. Also passionate about the water crisis, all of WASH, so water and sanitation. So I connected with him, found his website, connected with him one time. We started having conversations, realized how much similarity we had in our desire to help with the water crisis, and decided to partner up. So one of the beautiful things about Veterans Without Orders is what their whole mission set is, like, let's empower small teams of veterans to go abroad, use the skill set, use that comfort that we have, work in austere environments, do whatever needs to be done, come back together, experience that camaraderie, that brotherhood, that sisterhood, and go do some good in the world. So there's tremendous skill set there for that veterans have as they transition out. We can do things or feel comfortable doing things a lot of people can't do. So let's leverage that for many, many benefits. One benefit is the benefit to the veteran. Like, you're finally back, like, with a mission, something that you can do. You got that brotherhood, that camaraderie, the absurd sense of humor that seems to come out when you get a couple of military members together in an austere environment doing something. So that's a big benefit of Veterans Without Orders, is coming up with this plan and, like, here's your package, here's your mission, go execute. Obviously, then the benefit to the end user, this community that now has access to clean water that didn't before. So I love that mission model that they have, and we started supporting them with some fundraising, and then started taking some trips together. So now we get down on a joint effort, and
So, the organization Veterans Without Orders, how long have they been around? Do you know, like, specifics?
I think about 2017.
How's the recruiting process and like the vetting process? How do you become a part of the organization? Do you become a member?
Yeah, so it's also a very small organization. They're a bit bigger than mine. He was more active when John was still active duty, but now that he's out, he's working with Team Rubicon, doing some stuff with them. So now now he's busy doing that and can't do his own kind of passion projects. So we haven't done a trip. I don't think he's been on a trip since we went together. So but it's a lot of, like, word of mouth and, like, finding good dudes to travel with. And one of the things I love about his package and the model that they follow is they always take a medic or two down. So you travel in a small team, but there's a little bit of help or EMT kind of capacity there. So not only if something happens to an individual on the team, you can kind of take care of it internally, but also providing, it's an extra benefit to provide to a community to go into, do some screening, do some education, and help out there. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of word of mouth and just reaching out to other people that we've worked with in different organizations or volunteered with, and vetting people to kind of come along.
So, obviously, throughout this entire period, you made a pretty large impact. You said 12,000 people so far.
Yeah, that's right.
Your organization, working with the other nonprofit organizations, and with campaigning, funding, and going out there actually, literally drilling wells and being a part of the local community, which is awesome stuff. So what is some stuff that's coming up for this organization as we're going to transition into some other things that you're participating in, nonprofits and organizational stuff that you work on yourself? But what's kind of next for the 1 Million Go, and things that are coming up, and things people who are listening right now can participate in if they want to support you or support the other?
So certainly go to 1milliongoal.org. So spelled out 1 million. So ONEMILLIONGOAL. And that's the goal, to help 1 million people get access to clean drinking water. You can see some pictures of the previous things that we've done. There's a donate button on there, or you can reach out to me at any time if you want to learn some more about that. I'm always looking for more speaking engagements and obviously donors. But one of the big things about 1 Million Goal is just helping raise awareness. Because I realize that if I go and tell a group of 15, 20 people, whether it's a Rotary Club, Civitans, whether it's a church or a school, if I go and share that message, then you never know what kind of effects that's going to create. And it's going to be a lot of raising awareness that's going to help these, billion people around the world, finally get access to clean drinking water. That's a big thing about the focus of what water is. I realize there's many forms of pain and suffering in the world. There's a lot of needs that or problems that we need to eradicate, solutions that we can find. But at the end of the day, until everybody has clean drinking water, like none of that other stuff matters. Like how much are we going to do to end global wars or end economic problems or end education problems? If somebody doesn't have access to clean drinking water, like everything else is a nice to have at that point. So that's another reason I'm so focused on water, because I realize that the end of pain and suffering on the world, like nothing's going to create a sustainable or a lasting impact until everybody has water. So that's a big reason to focus on water. I don't know where I got on that soapbox, but there was some point there I was trying to make.
Well, the point being is that how can they help you out? Come to a
So yeah,
realization.
just spread awareness. So if you know of any organizations, whether it's like 2 weeks ago, they zoomed me in and I gave a presentation to a middle school down in Atlanta. I've gone to some local schools around here, speaking to any kind of small groups. So if anybody just wants to learn about it, so like I said, there's a lot of churches that are doing a water effort. If they just want to, if there's some way that I can provide benefit or value to that by coming in and maybe speaking to a congregation or speaking to a community group, just so that they have a better overall understanding about what the global water crisis is, and how and what we can do to make an impact, or how the little bit of impact that a church might go down and do, like how that's going to have a long and enduring positive change in the world. So speaking about the water crisis, speaking about 1 million goal, any audiences that want to have me come on or do a podcast or speak to a group, then I'm more than happy to do that. And then we'll have some trips coming up in 2024. So if you want to get on the email list, or check out the Facebook page, we'll be promoting for that. I like to just fundraise. So this is a beautiful thing about the way that 1 million goal is set. Is when I was in the Marines, I used to joke all the time that if I was in the Marines, I'd be doing this, I'd be doing that, I'd be doing like all these other things, like all these other things I was passionate about. But I was like, my excuse was, I'm in the Marines, so I can't do that. So I got in the Marines and they let me retire early. I was like, oh man, they just checked my cards. Like I better pony up and actually do some of these things. So I do have a lot of different projects, a lot of different things I'm involved in. The one thing I love about the way that 1 million goal is set up is that it's really like it can be on the back burner until it's once or twice a year it's time to do a fundraising campaign and fund a project, or it's time to fund a trip. Then I can accept donations. So I'm saying that is I love support and we love checks and we love donations all year long. But I try to keep that kind of Marine Corps mindset of being as efficient as possible. So if it comes down to it, and we got a trip going in like March of 2024, then I'm gonna raise whatever money we need to raise to execute that trip, and then go execute that trip and come back. And it can be a couple $1,000s. A global average is $25 to $30 to provide water to somebody. That's a global average of all the different solutions or all the different problems and reasons that somebody doesn't have access to water. We've been much more effective than that, as far as our impact. So with $60,000, $62,000 that we've raised overall since 2014, we've helped more than 12,000 people. So that's a lot less than $30 a head. One trip we took down to Nicaragua on our total budget was like $6,000. That was round trip airfare, lodging, everything for the team, and all the equipment. And we were able to get water filtration into 3 different schools. So that's 2,200 kids for like $5,000 that we were able to help.
It's pretty insane.
Yeah. So, but those are the things I like to look for, and that's like taking a little bit of the experience in the military, and like how do we do what's the most efficient way? How do we make the greatest impact? So, all right, there was some other question I was starting to answer. All right, so that's a little bit of the soapbox on the whole nonprofit thing. So I love, one of the things I love about veterans, like everybody's passionate about something. Everybody usually has a way that they want to make a contribution. The whole reason that people join the military is because they're of a fabric that they want to contribute to something. They want to serve something greater than themselves. And for a lot of veterans, that carries forward when they get out. And they want to find other ways that they can make an impact with something that's important to them. So I could talk about nonprofits and a little bit of philosophy about that, but I say, just kind of get started, figure out what you're most capable of, and then find some kind of scalable way to fit that into what you do. And that's what I started to talk about, the way that 1 million goal, so we can raise money, we can do a trip, then we come back, and I've got other things, and we'll probably talk about that here in a minute. Other things that I do, whether it's being home, being with family, enjoying all that, running some other organizations in the community, find ways that you can make an impact and make it kind of sustainable over a long period of time. There's one thing I needed to mention. I can't remember what it was. It'll come back in 10 minutes, and I'll mention it then.
Well, and while you're thinking about it, I want to kind of say this too. The reason why, kind of same construct as find your passions and desires, find the morality of things that interest you the most. Coming out of the veteran community, but civilians do this obviously too. Philanthropy is can be in everyone's hearts, and it
Right.
should be. You should give a little bit back to yourself to society and try to help people. You know, you don't have to do it on a global scale like you are, but there are definitely causes that are worth participating in, or being at least having an understanding of what they do and maybe giving something towards them.
Yeah.
So, like in my lens, the reason why I started the podcast is I wanted to share all of these veteran stories and show the impacts that they have. You know, whether it's locally, regionally. In your case, you know, it's just locally. It's also in a global scale in some form or fashion. Even though you're not a massive organization, you have global impact. You know what I mean? Because those 2,200 kids get dysentery and die off before they're 18 years old or age to become successful entrepreneurs. They could have become a doctor. They could have been the person who can cure cancer.
Yeah.
And you could have been the person to help them. I mean,
and how are you going to focus on school and like learning arithmetic when your stomach's growling or you're throwing up or you're missing school, you're missing class? Like kids should be learning and playing and like, you know, growing strong and gaining that education.
Yeah. I really enjoy being able to, you know, share the nonprofit world, for-profit businesses as well, because you got to be able to dip the toe in a little bit too, because somebody has to keep the lights on at the house. So, like not everybody that I talk to does nonprofit organizational stuff, but the impact is showing what capabilities are out there, what veterans are doing, all that stuff. And for my end, that's what makes me happy, is be able to share the lineage of these veterans, show the impact that they're having on their society, with their family, with their local community, whatever the case is, and kind of influence and inspire people to strive to be more than what they were prior to that conversation. Because a lot of people are lost when they transition out. You know?
Absolutely.
And that's kind of the next point we'll kind of jump into was the next nonprofit organization and how you ended up and realize you too.
So to your point, before we kind of transition, so one of the things, this is why I like talking about service work and stuff all the time, because taking a step back, like I think everything that we do as a human being is to gain one of three things: emotional benefit, physiological benefit, or spiritual benefit. And everything, and I asked everybody to challenge me on this. So can you think of another motivation that we have? Like, you know, if we go and do something for a friend, if we're working out, if we're trying to learn something, it's all to gain something. It feels good when we've done something, we've accomplished something or learned something. So there's emotional, physiological, or spiritual. The only thing that I know that fulfills all three of those needs or provides benefit or reward in all three of those areas is doing something for the benefit of somebody else. That's really the core of the message of Charity, the Gifts of Giving. Really short books, like 85, 90 pages. But it really just, like, that's the point that I'm trying to make, is that of everything that we want in our life as a human being for this human experience, and everything that we want to gain, you can gain that by going and doing something for the benefit of another person. It can be starting a nonprofit. It can be holding a door open for somebody. It can be putting $1, you know, in somebody's cup that's playing at the train station, whatever that is. But anytime we do something with the benefit of another person in mind, I consider that charity. So it's not just giving to an organization, but anytime you commit an action or do something with the benefit of another person in mind, in my eyes, you're committing an act of charity. You're doing something that's benefiting somebody else. And when we do that, it provides that return, the emotional, physiological, and spiritual return. You know, there's 4,000 recognized religions around the world. I did a sampling of the top 10, 12 religions, which really covers, 98% of people on the planet. And every religion, there's something about charity or something about giving that is either the top or the top two, like, tenets of that religion. So spiritually, it's recognized, across the world. Physiologically, we get a increase of oxytocin with a lot of things. We do something for the benefit of another person. Oxytocin is a hormone that's released in our body that mitigates or that reduces or turns back the effects of stress and cortisol. So in our normal lifestyles, we're creating a lot of stress and cortisol because we're stressing cortisol and adrenaline rather through the stress that we're experiencing. And that creates a lot of health problems, a lot of health issues, inflammation. And one of the things that mitigates that is the release of oxytocin. Well, one of the benefits that we have when we do something, again, whether it's me running and opening a door for somebody, going to the neighbor's house, helping her move something, or donating $100 to Charity Water, when you think about the impact that you're making and improving somebody else's life, you get a physiological return. There was a study, I think it was Berkeley, where they were looking at long periods of volunteerism, and they said people that regularly volunteer a couple times a week have the same health benefits as exercising 4 times a week. So the same reduction in early death, the same reduction in disease and illnesses.
All-cause mortality.
Yep, that's right. So the same reduction. So I always joke, every time I'm speaking to an audience, like, all right, so if you haven't made it to the gym enough times this week to take care of your health and you want the same benefits, you can go to 1milliongoal.org and you can make a donation, and that will provide some physiological return for your investment. So I appreciate the support. And then the last thing, emotional. So obviously we know it feels good whenever we give to another nonprofit. So the first message in the book, The Charity Gifts of Giving, it says whether you're doing it for oh wow, maybe I need to read it and quote it.
He's gonna plug himself real quick. I'm about it.
Yeah. All right. Let's plug this.
One of, by the way, Garret has written 5 independent books. One co-authored with his father, and he's going to talk about them a little bit throughout here. So,
all right, where's this at? So I thought it was the last page of the first chapter. All right, whether for selfishness or righteousness, everybody benefits when somebody gives. So my point behind that is if I'm having a shitty day and I know that I'll feel better if I go do something for my neighbor, or if I go buy a cup of coffee and take it to my coworker, like I'm going to experience some benefit. We just talked about the benefits here. I'm going to experience those benefits. If I'm doing that because I'm having a shitty day and it's only a selfish reason, I want to feel better. Like I don't want to feel, I don't want to feel this state of mind or something. Then who cares? Like somebody that at the other receiving end of that. Like if I go to the soup kitchen on Saturday because I've had a miserable week and I know that I'll feel better after I serve at the soup kitchen, the guy that I'm feeding doesn't care that I was, that I was there for my own selfish reasons. So everybody benefits when somebody gives. So, whether for whatever reason you're doing it, I don't know. All right. So quick plug there. So
now, here, hold up the book for him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Here we go. So Charity Gifts of Giving, you can get it on Amazon.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So, during service, obviously, we do humanitarian stuff in the military, working with outside the bases. And I feel like about half that, when the base forces you to, or command, it's because it's negative actions, because the military members fuck a town up. And then they're like, hey, go out and volunteer this weekend because you guys are all a bunch of jerks and you went and tore the sign down or caused too much mayhem. But the impact is still the same, regardless if what your intention is. I wholeheartedly agree. I always just make people go volunteer because I'm like, hey, what are you doing with your time other than like sitting around for the active duty guys? Like, what are you doing on the weekend?
That's right.
Like spend, just a couple months out of the year, doing things on and off. So that way you make an impact, whether it's locally at your USO or go working at a forestry place, ensuring that landscapes get planted and stuff like that, and they're replanting, whatever the case is, or with animals. I mean, do something.
Yeah, you're using your hands, you're using your time, your energy, and you're making the world a better place in your own little way. So it's beautiful.
But it's not hard. That's what I always tell people. Like you're making an impact. It's not hard to volunteer some of your time, because you really only, in my lens, you only get one shot at being a good person, being a good citizen. The only way you're going to make an impact is by going and doing something.
Yeah.
And to your point is that you need to find the things that motivate you and something you're drawn to, and find a focus. So that way you can make the most impact with what you're doing with your time.
Yeah, because those returns, the emotional, physiological, and spiritual, that's what I was saying. Like we get the greatest return on that when we do something that's important to us. Yeah. Not to say that we don't get a little bit of it everywhere, but if there's something, if you're touched by, maybe somebody in your life was touched by cancer, so you're like really passionate about helping out with that. My dad had some health conditions when he passed, and there's some local organizations that are working with people that have those health conditions. So if there's some way that it personally ties to you, then you're going to get a greater sense of return or reward from that.
Yeah, no, I definitely 100% agree with you.
And you can, it doesn't matter how small you start. Like I said, if you're having a rough day, and you want to go like grab a cup of coffee and go take it to somebody, or if you want to go hold the door open for somebody, like all these little things can really help. And we all get stuck and caught up in the business of life, and our best of intentions can kind of like die and lie by the wayside. But I think it's important to make a habit of it. Just, any small thing that we can do for somebody, make it a regular thing.
So obviously with service, a lot of people get pretty hard. Serotonin levels get all messed up. Cortisol levels are all messed up. And it's hard for people to have a philosophical like mindset to
Hmm.
get into philanthropy and find things that motivate them, find happiness, reintegrate back into society and
Yeah.
stuff like that, which is going to lead me to your next nonprofit that you're participating in. You're the executive director of Realize U 252. This is something you do at a local level,
Yeah.
and it focuses on reintegration into society and placement and purpose, which is something that I don't people have struggled with transition out of the military, but even in the civilian instances, there's a lot of
Yeah.
people that have troubles because of upbringing, local community, family issues, and just addiction.
Yeah. Our culture and
Tendencies.
our society just promotes addiction so much.
Yeah.
I mean, it promotes the escape from our reality, whether it's through a cell phone that sucks us out of like the real world and sucks us into that, or through consumerism, or through anything. There's the this big battle that we're fighting against. So at one time it was estimated $7 trillion a year spent on marketing and advertising. And I'm not suggesting that marketing and advertising is bad, but there's one core mission or one root mission at the end of the day for every marketing and advertising that you've ever seen. And the thought is, or the message that they're trying to get across is that you're not good enough as you are, and you need to consume or spend your money on whatever this thing is, or by getting outside of yourself and spending money on something that's going to create some kind of sensation inside, whether that's stopping at a fast food restaurant, whether it's buying a new Gucci bag, or taking a trip somewhere. Like that's the message that they're trying to get across. It's like, not okay, you're perfectly fine, you don't need anything, like you're a perfect creation, um, but what does that mean? So now we're inundated constantly, subliminally and overtly, right to our face, whether we're on social media or we're driving down the road seeing billboards. We're constantly bombarded with messages that we're not good enough as we are. So there's a lot of things that contribute to this feeling that we're not good enough as we are, but that's one major thing that we have that's kind of a catalyst for working against us. I mean, you can't open a magazine and not see a picture of somebody that looks like the way that you want to look, or driving a car that you think you want to drive. And a lot of this pulls us outside of ourselves so that we go seeking something. And I think that's really where addiction lies. It's in this seeking of something external to our body to create an internal feeling that we want to feel, whether it's avoiding a pain situation or creating a good situation. And that, I think that's at the root of every addiction. It's at the root of a lot of behaviors, but anything that spins out of control and becomes an addiction that or a compulsive behavior that really takes over somebody's life, that's what the root of it is. It's trying to seek something external to my body, whether it's a behavior that takes me out of my mind, or whether it's a substance that's going to make me feel a certain way. And for those people that struggle with addiction, it's either because the hooks of that substance or that behavior that they were exposed to is so great that they don't have the ability to now like normalize or operate without that, or the struggle or the challenge that they're trying to escape from, whether the things that they experienced in childhood, some of the developmental trauma or experiential trauma, things that they may have experienced, or something about themselves that they don't feel good enough about, or whatever that is. The pain that they feel is so great that they can't operate normally without trying to, without something to help them escape
Like
that state of
mechanism.
mind. Yep.
Yeah.
And for some people, this is where it's kind of weird in our society. There's some addictions that are not only okay, but even celebrated. Like workaholism is an addiction. You working all of your time at the expense of your relationships, your family, your personal health, and anything else that you might want to do. Like that's also a problem. But in our society, a lot of times, like that grind mentality is even celebrated. There's other things that aren't really frowned upon, but also come at a cost, like Netflix binging. Where somebody is, if you're escaping from your life at periods of your life, or you're not willing to face something in your life that you want to change, and instead you're going to spend hours of your time, absorbed in something else, and it's coming at a cost to your relationships, your education, your personal health. Like that's also a problematic behavior. Not to say that we don't do that or indulge in those things a period of time, but for me and for my eyes, there's not a whole lot of difference between somebody with a food addiction that's hundreds of pounds overweight that's struggling, or somebody with a spending addiction, or somebody with a gambling addiction, than there is somebody with a crack addiction or a heroin addiction. It's all a substance or a behavior that's intended to help us deal with some kind of internal void or internal pain.
Yeah. So I'm going to back up.
Yeah.
I do like the kind of the counseling side of this.
Yeah.
But I want to get into what led you into
Yeah.
addiction recovery a little bit. You're obviously very knowledgeable about this, so I want to kind of lead into
Yeah, wherever you want to go.
Yeah. Well, I want to lead into what got you into addiction recovery. Knowledge base is something we can share throughout the podcast that we're doing, but I want to talk about what led you into I realized you took into addiction recovery.
Absolutely.
What guided you towards that?
So I don't know if a lot of people know this, but people that have been in the Marine Corps, it's not a secret that there's a lot of consumption of things to get out of our mind constantly. I had one corporal that worked for me, and he said after his 4 years, like, I don't know what I got out of the Marine Corps except for a bad case of alcoholism. You know, and we even joke about it, and it's humorous in some ways. But yes, there's certainly this culture of, like, we're going to play hard, and then we're going to, you know, consume a lot of alcohol and not feel anything.
Party hard.
Yeah, that's right. Or, you know, just black out. I didn't know when I got out of the Marine Corps, I didn't know that civilians didn't black out every Friday and Saturday. Like, I thought everybody did that. I mean, it was behavior. Yeah, a little shocking to me. Or, you know, you show up at your civilian friend's house with a, you know, 30 pack for his Halloween, you know, Christmas party or Halloween party or something.
Kids party.
Yeah, that's right. Anything, any reason. Yeah, that's not really normal. So, so I've had a lot of experience in my life with substances and or, you know, high risk behaviors and things to avoid or to deal with some kind of internal thing that I was experiencing. Fortunately for me, so one of the darkest times of my life was when I was transitioning out of the military and struggling with, you know, existential crisis, like what the hell am I going to do with my life now? Going through a divorce, going through some financial challenges, still, you know, trying to reconcile my mind and everything from the last deployment. So a lot of challenges I was going through, and realized, you know, I was like, started to realize that the drinking wasn't helping any of that. And I didn't know what I needed to do, or if it was a real problem, how big of a problem it was. But I decided to, you know, just start a period of abstinence. So I was like, all right, look, I don't know if it's bad, but I know if I can't stop right now and not drink for the next 40 days, then it's bad. So let me just kind of experiment with this. And I experienced some healing, and I experienced some growth during that process. Also realized during that time that the reason I was drinking or doing any of the things I was doing is because there was some kind of monster inside of me, or there was something that I was feeling and I didn't want to feel it. Couldn't describe it, didn't know what it was, but sure as hell felt like it was killing me or trying to kill me. And the only way to shut the damn thing up was to get drunk or do something to kind of get out of my mind. And I didn't like that, and I didn't know kind of what to do. So I started to seek some counsel or some help or just answers to what the heck was going on. And through that, I found some great mentoring and great coaching. One of the mentors and coaches I worked with Jack Canfield. He's a co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul. He wrote a book called The Success Principles, and he does a lot of like mindset stuff, mindset coaching. So I did some work with him, went through a retreat with him, and what a lot of his message focuses on is that sense of like self-worth. So self-esteem, self-efficacy, self-worth, finding meaning and purpose in your life, finding ways to, you know, whether it's basic goal setting stuff, you know, finding ways to make meaningful progress or significant progress in a meaningful amount of time towards things that are meaningful to you. And what I found is, as I started to work on myself and started to do things that would improve my self-efficacy, my self-esteem, that this desire to get out of my mind started to go away.
Well, so in the case of addiction coming out of the military, it's something I talked about before on my podcast, and I'll continue to talk about. I mean, I fucking struggle with it too. I mean, I drink bourbon a couple days a week, 3-4 days a week. I sip a glass, and it's not typical normal behavior.
Yeah,
and it's not abstract to everybody else.
Sure.
But people will have addictions, obviously. Yeah. But we have the worst type of addictions in the military because we do everything to the extreme.
Right, absolutely.
We go way harder than everybody. We
Yeah.
lift harder, we train harder, we travel harder, we
Right.
party harder, we sleep harder.
Yeah.
We do everything just a little bit more than anybody else because that's literally the nature of how we are.
Yeah.
Because we want to be excellent at everything we do, whether it's bad or good. And that's literally kind of...
That's right.
That's literally why when I was like going for the Marine Corps, I literally cracked my back, bro. I like paralyzed myself in my first deployment, and I was just like, couldn't even get physical therapy because it didn't have it. And I was like, and I literally did 2 more deployments after that. Went special operation and challenged my body to the point where I'm now 100% permanent total, and I got numbness in my feet forever
Mm-hmm.
because I literally couldn't let it go. That
Right.
like maybe I should take different avenues in my life and
Yeah.
heal properly and blah, blah, do anything else other than like the things that I'm determined to
That's
accomplish
right.
or be a part of.
And it's so funny looking back on it, and it seems silly now, but yeah, that mindset, that mentality we have. Like I remember I had like a mole or something removed on my back, and the surgeon or the whoever was like, "Oh yeah, you don't lift for I don't know 2 weeks, 4 weeks." He basically like to me, I was like, I heard it as like, "Don't ever lift again," and I was like, "No, no, no." Like I'll give you like maybe this afternoon, but I'm back like doing deadlifts tomorrow. Like this, I've never heard of something so absurd, and it's crazy like, looking back on it. Like I mean, I would might relish a excuse to not lift heavy back for a couple of weeks, but back then it just seems so absurd, and that's part of like the mentality that you get wrapped up in. It's like no, we're going hard. Like I'm not going to let some potential scar in my future like stop me from from if I rip sutures, then put them back in, doc. Like we're getting back at it.
And I want people to know this. I'm not negating not giving 100% of yourself to be productive and try to accomplish things. What I'm saying is that there are certain behaviors that are so negative in the long term. You'll impact your life forever.
Yeah.
Whether it's overexerting in the gym, drinking, or driving 120-mile-an-hour on the highway because this is what you like to do after work to de-stress, and that's how you cope.
Yeah.
Like it's different for everybody, but everybody can go.
Well, there's things that are constructive and positive for your life, and there's things that are destructive. What they don't help us understand as young Marines is like you don't go 100% on both angles. Like, so I think a little bit of situational awareness about like, all right, I'm going all in on work, I'm going all in on diet, I'm going all in on exercise, I'm going all in on my service and my impact. Maybe I'm not going to go all in on like crushing ice cream or like 2 gallons of ice cream, this weekend, or drinking that 30 pack, on a Friday afternoon.
Yep.
So through that experience, I had learned some things, and and it's been on and off since then, whether I've been completely abstinent from alcohol or not. But what I learned was that there's alcohol is just one thing, but there's other behaviors that we do, and that's where I started to understand like that escapism aspect of it. And through the work I was doing with Jack Canfield, I noticed that constant like propensity or that desire to like get out of my mind started to go away as I started to put myself together. And then later, what I learned was, I mean, as I got in the Marine Corps, I wanted to go be a professional speaker and talk about like leadership stuff and communication, like anything that I thought like I'd have a marketable, ability to, or something from my military career that would make me marketable for that.
Yeah, transferred over.
Yeah, and and what I realized was a lot of what I had learned and a lot of this message I was trying to take about personal development, about self, that self-esteem, that finding meaning, finding sense of joy, finding connection. A lot of that had really transformed my life as I got to know other people that had struggled with addiction and gone through more traditional treatment processes, like off to a detox, off to a rehab. I realized there was a lot I learned that they weren't getting with whatever they were being exposed to. A lot of people going, being in the rooms, going to the 12-step meetings. There's a lot of great stuff you get from there, but I also felt like from what I'd seen at that point, that there were some missing pieces. So I realized at that point, and it kind of parallels my journey into water. So one of the things I love about water, or what really drew my attention to that, was I felt like I could make the greatest net good impact on the world with the limited time, energy, and attention I had and resources by water. So like I said, that $100 over to St. Jude, that's going to do something good. But I felt like, all right, I've got this $100. What can I do with it? If I can help provide water to 3 people for their lifetime, the net good impact that I'm doing in the world is a lot more significant. So now you bring that same mindset and that same lens or perspective over to addiction recovery. And I'm thinking like, all right, if I can go teach some like mid-level executives on like how to like improve their leadership or how to set better goals so they can be a little bit more successful with their life, okay, that's going to have some kind of net good impact on the world. What if I can take everything I learned from my own experience and everything I learned about addiction and coping mechanisms and personal development and creating that life that's worth living that we don't want to escape from, so that we can deal with those destructive behaviors that are taking an undue toll in our life? What if I can share all that with people that have struggled with addiction? What if I can share my own story and everything I've learned with people that have struggled with addiction? Not only is it going to take somebody who could, maybe they found recovery, they started their journey in recovery. Not only am I going to help him continue his life on a positive trajectory and improve his life, improve his joy, happiness, his contribution to the community, to a society, but I'm also going to impact his whole family's life, because addiction is not something that somebody suffers with in silo or by themselves. Addiction is something that takes a toll on neighbors, on family members, on community, on coworkers. So the net good impact that I have in the world, I mean, it seems a little silly that thought process is kind of what brought me to this realization that I want to put my chips in on this endeavor. But I wanted to make the greatest net good impact I could on the world, and I realized that by my own experiences that I've had, if I can help other people in that same way, that I can transform not just lives but families and communities.
Yeah, so that's one thing that is getting people to understand perspective,
Mm-hmm.
giving people perspective, and you can do it in a charitable way like you have. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
So I do want to share the local nonprofit
Yep.
and kind of what you guys do and how you guys are your organization's structured and all that stuff,
Yeah.
and how you guys impact in the environment.
Yeah, certainly. So the name of the nonprofit is called Realize You 252. And the word realize, because it's our intent, it's our mission to help individuals that have struggled with addiction to realize their true potential or their full potential in recovery. So what we do is we operate a male recovery residence. So a recovery residence is a sober living environment where people go to after they've been to treatment. So it's not a clinical organization. We don't provide clinical services in house, but we provide everything else that somebody needs to continue on that path or that journey forward. So one of the sad but truths is in the addiction treatment world and the addiction recovery industry is that a really good 30-day program or something to help somebody, a good rehab, um, a really good one might have a 10 to 15% success rate. That means after a year or two, that individual hasn't returned to use or returned to that same behavior that they sought treatment for. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of people that are failed by going off to these 30-day programs with revolving doors on it. You talk to a lot of people, they've been 5, 6, 12 times to some 30-day program, and it hasn't helped them make that shift that they need. Well, it makes sense because somebody doesn't struggle with addiction because something happened and then 30 days later they're struggling with addiction. So it's a lifetime progress. I mean, it's a lifetime path. And everybody that struggles with an addictive substance or behavior, there's a different set of circumstances or events or conditioning or things that led to that person down that journey to this place where they're struggling. But that could be 10, 15 years. So for 10, 15 years, somebody's struggling. The best that they can do is this daily struggle or this weekly struggle with this addictive thing. How the hell are you going to change that in 30 days? I mean, it takes 2 years for the brain to like create new neural pathways and create, fundamental changes in the brain. So this thought that you're going to help somebody change that in 30 days is ridiculous. I understand like it's the best that a lot of people can do because you can't just stop your life for a couple of years and go hit the reset button.
Yeah. So
there is a lot of value from that, but there's a lot of people that aren't served as well as they could be. So what we found is where we can provide our greatest value add is what can we do to help mitigate that? What can we do to help mitigate the 85 to 90% of people that seek treatment and don't get the level of support and care that they need? And there's a lot of this 10% number shows up a lot in addiction. They say about 28 million adults in America struggle with addiction. It's about 1 in 10 adults in America struggle. Now that could be a behavioral addiction, it could be a substance, it could be one of the addictions that we regularly classify or think of as addictions, whether it's crack, cocaine, meth, heroin, alcohol, or it could be something else. But it's there's a substance or behavior that's creating undue impact on their life or undue consequence in their life. So about 1 in 10 adults. And now about 1 in 10 of people that struggle with addiction will actually seek help. There's a lot of social stigmas, pressure, self-esteem issues that prevent people. They're barriers to anybody even raising their hand and saying like they want help. My personal story, when I knew that there were times I was struggling in the military that like I didn't want to raise my hand and say like, hey, I think I had a drinking problem because I'm going to be ostracized by everybody I'm trying to connect with. Yep. I didn't know if that would end my flight career. Like I didn't know what would come of it. I knew it wasn't going to be all positive. I knew there were going to be some costs and unintended consequences. So that was a big reason that I didn't seek help at that time. But for anybody else, it could be like the embarrassment. Like, yeah, they don't want to lose their circle of friends, and this is the group of people they do their thing with. They don't want, they don't want to have to take time away from. They don't want to admit to themselves that there's something that they want to change and that they're not able to do it. So for that, and whether it's logistically, whether it's money, whether it's you can't afford it, there's no place to go, whether you don't know where to go, and you don't want to search on the internet. There's a lot of reasons that people that need help or want help don't seek the help they need. So only about 10% of people seek the help that they need of those 28 million people that are struggling. And of those people, only about 10% of people get the actual return that they want from the help that they seek. So 2.8 million people might go off to rehab or might go to treatment, and only about 10% of those get that long-term sustainable recovery that they're really after. So what helps that is what we've decided is this: the greatest value add is we can mitigate that 85% to 90% return to rehab over and over rate by providing a safe, supportive environment for people to go to after rehab. A lot of people, they'll leave their job, their family, their house, they'll go to rehab, they come back 30 days later, and now they don't have their number one coping mechanism to deal with all the emotions that they're feeling, but they come back to all the same stressors, challenges, burnt relationships, frustrations, resentments, and everything. And that's a big reason a lot of people will return to use and go back. They just they haven't developed the skills, they haven't made the fundamental changes in their life in such a short period of time that they can sustain their recovery. So if you go from active use, you seek help, you go to a treatment facility, it's going to be very high support because there's one clinician to every one or two patients that are there, or clients that are there. Have very high support, very low stress. They do everything they can in that environment to mitigate any kind of external stresses that you might have. Like you have a routine, you have a lot of support, anything, if there's any stressors from the outside world, they're going to mitigate that so it doesn't come through to you, so that you can just focus on your addiction recovery. Very high support, very low stress. You leave that environment after 28 days and you go back to a very high stress environment, very low support. Maybe you go to a meeting every day or every week. Maybe you have a therapist that you go see every week or every other week. But now you're back in the fight, you're back in the fire, and you got very low support. So that's a reason that a lot of people return to use. So the recovery residence that we designed is somebody comes from treatment and they'll come into our recovery residence and they'll live in a safe, supportive environment with the support of fellow, we only have a male residence right now. So brothers that are also, in a recovery journey, that understand what they're going through, that can support one another. And we provide that space for them to continue their journey. And instead of going from a very high support, low stress environment to a very high stress, low support environment, we give them a opportunity to kind of ease back into that. Come and focus on yourself, continue your physiological recovery, start to work on the self-esteem, start to work on finding meaning and purpose in your life. Take advantage of that break where you can really think about, like, what's meaningful to me? What do I want to do with my life? How do I want to spend my time? A lot of us struggle, or a lot of people struggle, because they're not getting joy and fulfillment out of whatever they've committed their life to. And that's taking a toll. So like, how do I shift that course? Maybe I don't want to go work the rest of my life in retail, or go back to this profession that I had. Maybe I want to shift so I can find something that's more meaningful, so that I can fill my cup with joy from that endeavor, and not just fill my cup, at the end of the day, to numb the pain of doing something that I don't like all day.
Yeah. So, the organization, when did it start? How are you guys funded? And so it's obviously a live-in kind of situation. Yep. How does and it's not a clinical residence. It's more of a counsel support network. Right. That's kind of
so. There's many other needs that somebody has. I mean, we have clinical needs. There's somebody that's in a recovery journey. Yes, we have clinical needs, and this is back to like the I don't know, the same lens that I looked at with water, and like, all right, what are those two critical things that I can support to make the greatest impact with water? And that's how 1 Million Goal was started. Well, Realize You, it's kind of the other side of the coin, because what we want to do is, all right, what are all the things that somebody needs to address in their life that's not addressed in the clinical setting? So like I'd say, if somebody's in a meeting with their therapist or counselor or clinician 1 hour a day, we take care of the other 23 hours a day. You help somebody identify the problems that are with them, like the diagnoses or whatever they have, and like, what are the problems that they're dealing with, and like, how do we mitigate those problems?
Yeah.
Our approach, a coaching approach to that, is let me help you identify all the things that are good about you, and how do we use those things to make forward progress in your life? To the same end, but it's like, are we trying to reduce the things that are holding us back, or increase the things that are pulling us forward? So from that coaching, that non-clinical perspective, that's really the vision of what Realize You is. So I think we listed 15 different things that you need in order to, different areas of life that you need to focus on, whether it's spiritual life, whether it's contribution, whether it's education, whether it's your physical health, whether it's, basic needs for subsistence, food, shelter, water. We focus on all those other things so that somebody has that full foundation to really build a strong, stable recovery.
So you guys are obviously local to here. Mm-hmm. How do they get enrolled into the Realize You 252, and how long will you guys assist them?
Yeah.
What's the kind of time periods people get work? You guys work with them, and then kind of how do you reintegrate them back into like normal society after the fact? And I guess like and now we also want to know how the funding
Which
works.
one of those 12 questions do you want me to answer first?
I know.
No,
Start
yeah.
start wherever, but I want to.
Well, you keep track of what I'm not answering, and we'll come back to it.
Well, you know, it's a lot that goes on, and I kind of want to.
Yeah.
So I don't. Most people don't understand how like charitable organizations are structured, and what they can impact, and how they gain, and how they manage money, and how you have to have a board, and you have, you know what I mean, like you.
Oh, that's that fun story we'll come back to about the how I started my first 501c3. All right, so Realize You. So we have a single residential facility. One of the big value adds that we provide there is that we really make it feel, you know, a lot of your dignity, a lot of your self-esteem and everything comes from the environment that you're in. So we really make a strong effort to make it feel like a home-like environment. So it's a single family home. It's been modified. It has 8 bedrooms. We use 6 of them for residents. We double up some residents. Right now, we're really at our max capacity, which is 8 residents plus 1 house manager that lives on site. And let's see, and it serves the local community. For people we get a lot of referrals from treatment. Like I said, we're an ideal next step for somebody that's coming out of treatment. So we get referrals from treatment. Also, some people that just find us on the internet or through any of the events that we do in the community. We try to stay really well connected. One of the things that we really focus our time and energy on is being a connector to resources. So somebody, you know, for you and me, in our best headspace, when things are going well in our life, it can be hard enough to find some of the resources in this community, especially if you don't know that they're available. Somebody that's been struggling with addiction for the last 10 years and they're like 30 days into their new recovery journey, they don't have a chance to realizing like, oh, there's scholarship money over here, you can do this, and there's these programs and these social services. So we really focus a lot of energy on being connectors to those social services, whether it's going through Evoke Rehab, whether it's going back to the community college, going to the Volt Center, getting a trade, finding some money that's going to help pay your program fee or EBT, whether you're eligible for that, like getting you all enrolled in that. So through being connectors, we need to be connected in the community. So we try to get the word out there a lot about what we're doing. So we get a lot of referrals that way. People can also go to our website, which is realizeyou252.org. The 252 is because we like to set big, grandiose goals and have big visions. So our vision is that someday there'll be a Realize You 919, 703, 571 as we spread this proven concept, around the country. So that's how we get our residents. A typical resident will apply. They'll call us, just kind of find out more about our program, how we're different, how we're better than any other option that's out there. And then they go through a quick kind of like screening application, and then we interview them on the phone.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting towards.
Yep.
I want people to understand kind of the structure of the organization, how you guys induct people, process how they get supported by you guys. Where does the funding come from? Kind of that deal. Because obviously you're a nonprofit, so you have to get funding from somewhere. Yeah, you guys aren't. You guys aren't owning houses. And
we just keep applying for new Amex cards and just running those things up. I mean, I guess someday it's going to come back and bite us, but. So one of the things, a nonprofit business is still a business, so it's still got to have a sustainable. You can't have too many red numbers on your P&L for too long. So one of the unique things, and this is kind of it's a business decision, but it's also a programmatic decision. One of the unique things that's about us is we're not free to come to, but we're not exclusively expensive. Like we're not prohibitively cost expensive. So for a typical, what we do, we get funding from grants, and I apply for a lot of grants. We go after a lot of grants and donations to create a scholarship fund to help people by subsidizing their program fee. Our program fee at this time is $1,000 a month for the first 6 months when people are getting the most support, and then it goes down from there. But during that time, we don't have any residents that pay that full $1,000. Usually it's $0 for the first month, and then maybe between $250 to $550 for the next 5 months, with the scholarships and with some local connections that we have. But it is important for me that they are contributing something for a lot of reasons. For one, from a business side, that helps us by them contributing to it. But for the individual, their own confidence in their self and their own self-efficacy, their own sense of dignity, if you're just getting a free ride, that's fun, but that comes at a cost too. Like the longer you get a free ride, the longer your self-esteem, your confidence, your self-worth and everything deteriorates. You can't go through a program that's free for you for 6 months or a year and then immediately move out, drop your deposit for a down payment for an apartment and be ready to like pay all your own bills and kind of pay your own way. So that's really important to us from that programmatic perspective. Is like we're not doing anybody service their best service if they don't have some kind of skin in the game. And we're not helping them grow and mature if we're not also like putting on a little bit more responsibility and helping ramp that up, because we want people to easily walk out of our program and into their own apartment and kind of move on with their life, their best life.
Yeah, that's something that I wholeheartedly believe in when it comes to giving to somebody. It's the kind of that same thing. Like you give somebody one time, they're very appreciative.
That's right.
You know, the second time they're like kind of confused, like, oh, is this like a normal behavior? And then by the third time plus, like they expect you to continue to give them things, and they don't have any, they won't structure their life anymore, and they start to give up values that they need to inherently have as a part of.
Yeah, then you question your own worth and your own ability to kind of cover your own, your own expense or make your own contribution. Yeah. That's not serving anybody. And then and if you don't address that, then that becomes the void that then you need to escape from with some kind of substance or behavior, and it becomes that downward spiral or that kind of return, that return process.
No, I think that's excellent. So,
yeah. And you asked about how long our residents can stay there. So one thing about a recovery residence, the model that we follow is it's resident driven length of stay. So we've got one guy that's been there 3 years. We got, some other guys that they've come in the last couple of months. It's my goal and my mission to make sure that we're continuing to provide value, that people will want to stay there at least 1 year, hopefully up to 2 years. We do screen for people because we do have that scholarship money, and it's so hard to kind of come by, and we do a lot of work to get that scholarship money. We really try to screen for people that don't intend to be there 6 months.
Yeah.
Because then we feel like we're not able to help or support them enough. I mean, through their growth and what we can provide, what we can add to them. So we really try to screen that out. So that's something we look for, because if somebody hears like through the grapevine that, oh, you can go to that one place and it's going to be free for the first month, that might be as far as they're thinking. And then have no intention of staying there beyond that. And that's fine. And we'll point them to the direction of any resource that we know of in the community. It's our goal, and this is what I constantly tell the guys that work with me. It's our goal to be the best program that we can for those that we're the best fit for.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think that it's pretty excellent. I don't know that there's a lot of programs out there, even in North Carolina or across the country, where people can slowly but surely reintegrate back into society, find structure, have counseling, be around people that are like them after addiction recovery.
Yeah.
These addiction centers will charge you $10,000 to go up for a month, and you guys are low end costs. Taking grants, scholarships that you're individually applying for, and what donations to go ahead and do what you can to benefit these men and try to reintegrate them into local society, which is, it's an excellent source. I can't say it enough. So,
and making a long-term, like having a long-term vision and realizing it's not going to be something that changes overnight. I understand why a lot of people even hesitate to go to a 30-day program, because like you have a problem today, you don't want to have that problem tomorrow, and you want it to be over with. Well, the reality is for most people, it's going to be a long process. It's going to take a year until you feel comfortable in your recovery. It's going to take another year until you're really getting back to and leaning into your true potential. And that can be a scary thing, an unrealistic expectation. If I were to tell you, like, I need to stop everything you're doing right now and make something else your priority for the next 2 years, that's a lot to ask of somebody. So I understand why that barrier is there. And for those that are ready for it, the typical resident that we get in has been somebody who's been to rehab a handful of times, and they've realized, like, all right, that solution's not working. I need something more, something different.
Yeah. We're about 2 hours in right now. I'm going to take a break.
Feels like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
We just got going.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to take a break. We'll pause. We'll come back in to the podcast.
All right.
Sweet. Quick break, and then we'll be back. So here we are. We're getting back into it again. Welcome back to our break.
Start the second half.
Yeah, I have a little bladder. I got starting to get older, and I drink like too much coffee and water in the mornings now. Yeah. So
I got a relief tube behind my desk, so I just been hope you're not picking that up on mic.
Oh, no, we're good.
All right.
So we were talking about your second nonprofit that you majorly participate in as the executive director.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, one of the questions you asked was kind of what got me involved in that nonprofit specifically, and what I'd heard that there were some people in the community trying to come together and trying to figure out what we could do to make an impact and help change the tides in our own community. So I wanted an opportunity to bring some of the curriculum and everything that I developed that I was using in coaching. I wanted an opportunity to have kind of a platform for that, to offer it to more people. So that's kind of what drew my interest in it. And initially, I was sitting in the back of the room, just like waiting for my chance to offer my value or put my input. And then over the years, that's kind of whittled down to me being the executive director. So it's like, be careful what you ask for, right? Like when I'd heard of this thing that was called a sober living house like years ago, I was like, oh, that'd be cool to have one of those one day. Like run one of those. Well, you gotta be careful what you put out there because it might come in a different way or a little bit quicker than what you thought.
Come to fruition.
Yes, but what excites me the most though is offering, like I said, a little bit of what I picked up in my own journey that I know people aren't getting in their clinical or in the rooms or other things that they're exposed to. Some of that coaching aspect of it, to help them become that better version of themselves so that they can move forward. So I've developed a curriculum. It's called Thriving in Your Recovery, and it's positive psychology based, and it brings a lot of the some of the elements that I got from Jack Canfield in my own journey when putting myself back together and developing my own self-efficacy and self-esteem. And it's also deeply infused with applied positive psychology. So looking at different areas of human flourishing so we can address those areas and make some growth and make some progress in those areas. So from positivity to engagement to meaning to relationships and achievement, looking at all of those different areas. Because what I've realized is that there's these recognized different areas that we can flourish in our life. But if we're not addressing one of those, and that can be a critical vulnerability that can make the rest of the deck come falling down. So the Thriving in Recovery is really a holistic program, looks at all of those areas, starting with positivity and developing emotional resilience and feeling better about ourselves so that we have a better version of us showing up to apply for those other things. So initially that curriculum is offered at the house. And then since then, we've added some other things and I've developed some things for what I do outside of the nonprofit and my own for-profit coaching and speaking, now working specifically with veterans because I don't know if you felt this, but when I first got out of the military, like I wanted to get as far away from that and go find out who the hell Garret Biss was and not, Captain Biss or Sergeant Biss or anything the identity that I had taken on at that point. So for a couple of years, like I wanted to distance myself. And now I'm at the point where I'm really drawn back to help serve the community and those people that I understand the best, which is veterans through the specific challenges that veterans have.
Yeah, so on my end, I was always very organized, very structured in my career. I don't hate to be boastful, but I was pretty proficient and I was pretty good at my job. But I knew that when I got out, I'd want to continue to work around veterans. Probably thought for a long time that it might have been my purpose to work for the Department of Defense in some kind of form or structure, but now looking at it, I'm like, I want to be around veterans. I don't know if I want to be around active duty anymore.
Yeah, sure.
But I mean, I structured the podcast to interview just veterans, right? And then maybe one day I'll go to first responders, EMS, other different businesses, entrepreneurships, and avenues that are out there in the world. But who knows? I mean, I did this because it's something that it was fulfilling. I thought this was something that was lacking in society, was sharing stories, especially the post 9/11. But and to your question, but it wasn't. I knew that I wanted to get away from people. That was something I wanted to do. Yeah. And eventually I probably will, but I want to be around veterans forever. So, I mean, I definitely get your new venture that you're working with veterans.
I mean, veterans are unique. And somebody told me this, it was on a Veterans Day event I was at, and I hadn't heard this before, and now it's really stuck with me that the reason that there's a term veteran is because once you've joined the military, you're never going to be a civilian again. Like we're different. Like we're a different tribe. We have little idiosyncrasies, our values. Like we're different. We're forever altered. So we're never going to be a civilian again. So that's hence the reason the term veteran, because it describes us. We're not civilians now. We're veterans.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know how people do it without any emotional support networks and community support, how they transition out and be successful. Yeah. I mean, you got the 1% of any organization or group of people that can get out and be 100% fine. Yeah. Not rely on vices, not rely on anybody, and become completely 100% successful and transition out and not fall back on anything their past.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know any veterans that are like that.
Mhm.
I mean, there is 1% probably
Yeah, yeah.
somewhere, but I don't know a single veteran who does not take a buddy call, who doesn't give a buddy call,
Mhm.
who doesn't rely on some of the formalized training, structures, or discipline values
Right.
that you get from your service. So, like,
Yeah.
on my end, I'm like, I rely heavily on it. I mean, I wasn't a bad person before I joined, but I was pretty wild.
Mhm.
You know, I had good morality because of my parents, but like, realistically, upbringing to the service, I would choose my service characteristics over my
Sure.
childhood characteristics.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because I would be more successful in the long run.
Mhm.
So, organizationally, especially. So,
Yeah.
but,
Well, you're pointing back to the transition though, and that's the main thing that's really drawn me back into. Like I've decided to divest of everything else as far as coaching and speaking for a while, and just talk about veterans, the specific challenges that veterans face if I'm speaking to a community organization, and then and just specifically working with veterans, because the message that I share is, regardless of what a veteran experienced during their time of service, just the transition from active duty service to veteran life can be a traumatic experience for veterans. So, a traumatic experience, I mean, this isn't a clinical definition, but I understand trauma as meaning an experience or an event that happens that creates a fundamental change in your values, your beliefs, or your understanding about yourself or the world. So, for example, you're in a car accident and somebody dies next to you. For your whole life up until that point, you lived in a world where you could generally get into a car, you could feel safe, comfortable, you could drive around, you could commute, you could run your errands, and you don't have to worry about somebody dying next to you just like that. And then from that moment forward, now you live in a world and you're in a new reality where things like that do happen because you've confronted it and experienced it. And I think a lot of the trauma, like the symptoms of or the struggles that are associated with trauma, is us trying to reconcile where we were and where we are now, like the world that we lived in and now abruptly changed, like the world that we live in now. And whether that's somebody who was assaulted or sexually assaulted or abused when they were a child, like up until that point, they lived in a world where you could generally trust those people that are around you. And then the minute that you suffer that abuse, now you live in a world where, hold on, like now I don't know who I can trust. I don't know when I can feel safe and when I can't feel safe. And there's a really strong challenge reconciling that. So I bring up that point or that perspective because the transition from active duty service to a veteran life is a traumatic experience. There's fundamental changes in your values, your beliefs, your understanding about yourself, and your understanding about the world that happen during that quick transition. We as humans have three basic needs, or three fundamental needs that I think really separate us. Of course, we have all the basic animal needs for food, shelter, water, that sort of thing. But as humans, to experience the full, the fulfilling life and all the joy and all the flourishing that a human can experience, we have three fundamental needs. The first need is for connection. So we need connection. We're hardwired for connection. We talk about being of service to other people and the oxytocin that we release. Also, when you're laughing with somebody, when you hug somebody, when you have a new experience with somebody, it releases that oxytocin, which is a mechanism for dealing with the cortisol and the adrenaline and the stress that we have in our life. We're also hardwired by feeling the expression of emotions for others. I mean, there's some people that are empathic, that are much more in tune with the emotions of people around them, but we all have mirror neurons, and mirror neurons is a way to tie into or to understand an emotional expression that somebody else is facing. So there's a part of our brain, a function of our brain called mirror neurons. And basically, if you've ever seen somebody like fall down, or you're watching a video, like a crash video, and you go like this, it's because there's a part of you that for a second, like you were feeling that expression. If somebody comes into a room, if your child comes into the room and they're sad or they're crying, like you're going to feel a sense of sadness. And a lot of that is this mechanism within our body that helps us connect to others. So we are tribal creatures. We're social creatures. We need to be part of a tribe, or we need to be connected in a community in order for us to survive. Our basic biological needs require this. We need safety. We need shelter. And if we're not connected, if we're not accepted to those that are around us, whether it's at work, if we're not valued at work, if we're not valued in our community, if we're not valued in our family, then those basic needs that we have for our basic survival can be challenged. If we're not valued at work, maybe we're going to lose our job. Maybe we're not going to be able to find gainful employment. Maybe we're not going to be able to support our family or pay for the roof over our head. So we need connection. We need to be connected to others. We live in communities. We can't do everything that we need to do on our own. This the show Naked and Afraid, where they have to go out in a survival situation and do everything that they need to find food and find water and all that stuff. Most of us wouldn't survive in that situation for much more than a few days, because we need to have stores to go to get stuff. We're not all growing groceries and livestock in our backyards. We're building our own homes, like you just did, to help out your mom. And so we don't have those. We need to be part of a community. We need to be part of we need connection. So that's the first need that we have. We need connection. We also need authenticity. So if connection says you are lovable and acceptable, or you are welcome to be part of my tribe, you're welcome to be part of this community, this group, to enjoy this brotherhood, whether it's at work, whether it's in the community, whether it's amongst your friends, your social network. Authenticity says you can be just who you are, saying what you want to say, asking for your needs to be met, sharing the fears that you have, sharing the desires that you have, being exactly who you are. You can be authentic and still acceptable. So if we don't have authenticity, if we don't have permission to be authentic, then we don't have permission to show up as ourselves. And what we do to mitigate this is we put on a mask. We show up as a version of ourselves. So we show up with a certain attitude, with a certain character. We show up, as a certain version of ourselves in order to be accepted. When you're starting a new romantic relationship and there's things that you want to hide about yourself to make sure that this other person is going to love you and accept you. So we're hiding ourselves behind a mask. We're hiding our true self behind a mask. We're biting our tongue. We're not saying things that we want to say, or we're acting in a different way in order to get that acceptance at work or in our personal life. What that also does is it's also sharing a message with us that we're not lovable and acceptable as we are. So that creates shame. That creates self-doubt. That creates a challenge for our self-worth, which then erodes the emotional foundation of who we are and what we are. And then we seek things that are external to us to fill that void inside. We don't like the fact that we have to hide us. Maybe we're hiding the fact that we had a trauma that happened to us. Maybe, we're hiding a fact that, we were abused as a child, or that something horrible happened to us. So we're hiding that because we're afraid if people knew that about us, that they wouldn't accept us as we are. So maybe there's something that happened in our past, or maybe there's something about us. For veteran, this was me. My journey out of the military was trying to fit in with the civilian world and hiding some true parts of my identity so that I wouldn't be seen as that weird veteran that's standing in the corner, and I would be accepted. So, but that comes at a toll. Like I said, that comes at a toll of our sense of self-worth. And for me, that was part of the monster that was growing inside of me that I didn't know how to deal with. So I reached for something to shut that monster up. So connection, authenticity, the last thing that we need is a sense of meaning. So meaning is often derived from doing or being engaged in something that provides a sense of return for us, whether it's a job that we're in, whether it's a contribution that we're making. For some people, they get their sense of meaning from their vocation, and that's great. For other people, they work to pay their bills, and then they go get their sense of meaning from something else. There's a guy named Dr. Viktor Frankl, and he wrote a book, Man's Search for Meaning. And basically what he says is that meaning is one's capacity to endure suffering. So if we have a sense of meaning for our discomfort or our suffering, then we have the capacity to endure it. We can endure the suffering of long deployments and workup cycles and challenging workouts that are physically uncomfortable. We can endure all that because there's a great sense of meaning behind it. We can endure late night studying. You can endure all the effort that you're going to put in, to producing this podcast because there's a strong sense of meaning behind it. If we don't have that sense of meaning, then that our capacity to suffer through things or to endure that pain goes away.
It goes back to kind of the rudimental phrase, which is task and purpose in the military.
Mm-hmm.
You got a task and your purpose. You find the intent behind what the commander wants you to accomplish. And
That's right.
You go for it and you do what you needed to get done. You don't really have a whole lot of time during your active duty service to kind of compartmentalize what you're actually doing, and then all the time goes by and then you're out and you're like, what is my task or purpose? I'm my own commander now. So what do I do with my life, and where do I go, and how do I move forward?
That's right. And if you can find that sense of purpose, then it helps. There's so many variables. When we were talking about this before we started, there's so many variables in the civilian world and the post military world. Military service, to me, it wasn't always easy, but it was really simple. Like I never really had to. There was not much guesswork on what I was going to do today. Like when I got up, like when you got your MOS, now you know what you got to do to get the next promotion. Like I know the career school that I had to go to. I knew that, and You know what your PFT score needs to be, your CFT score needs to be if you want to get that next promotion. So it's
Roadmaps.
difficult work, but yeah, you got that roadmap. There's not a lot of latitude to it. You get out and there's everything is possible and everything's an option. That's something I've struggled with because, like I said, there's so many interests and passions that I have. Like I come into work some days and I don't even know where to devote my time because it's not so clear to me, and that's really challenging. And when for a lot of people that transition out, if you don't have that thing to kind of sink your teeth into, then there's too many variables that you can't even take in action because you don't know. There's no feedback mechanism to know if you're going in the right direction. Now, once you have a goal in mind, like whether it's creating, your 100th episode of a podcast or the impact that you want to make or helping 1 million people get access to clean drinking water, that at least fixes a couple of variables. So then you can like march off in the right direction. But back to that transition from military life, I say that transition itself is traumatic because the moment that you transition, you get your DD 214, you lose your connection, your authenticity, and your sense of meaning. For a lot of people, that connection, that brotherhood, or that sisterhood that we have in the military, you're never going to experience that again. You're never going to have that level of connection with a friend that they're willing to go into combat. They're willing to sacrifice their life for you. In the civilian world, at best, like if it's not inconvenient to me, I'll come over and help you like do something at your house. But this whole like, hey, let's endure 40-hour like wake periods during a deployment or do all these workups. So there's a fundamental shift in the way that we feel connection. We also lose a lot of connection because we're now surrounded by people that are not like who we identify with, who we become.
I want this to be known. It's a connection through shared suffering.
That's it.
It's literally how we build bonds.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that builds some extremely tight bonds and connection. And, there's people that I serve with that I still like, even though I haven't talked to them in years, like I still feel a tighter connection with them than people that I've been around, for years since then.
Yeah.
And it's through that level of connection. So you lose that sense of connection because you lose that sense of brotherhood. And now you're out trying to, kind of find your way. You lose that authenticity. Well, for me, like I remember like putting on a mask, like, all right, I'm gonna show up as this Garret Biss version of myself because if Captain Biss shows through, like that's not gonna be okay in this. Like if I share some of the jokes that are on my mind right now, these people will probably never talk to me again. Or or like I mean, it took me years to smile like in public because I was just so used to, this stoic face and not smiling, not communicating. So that was a challenge. And as I'm wearing these masks, it's also reinforcing a message in me that I'm not lovable and acceptable as I am. Like if I show up as my entire adult life, everything I knew about my identity was as being a Marine. So now now that I'm, in my 30s and 40s, like I'm trying to figure out what's my identity now. Our prefrontal cortex isn't even formed. Our whole sense of self isn't even created when we enlist in the military. So everything that we know about ourselves from an adult perspective is in that context. So now you're really thrust out into a whole unknown, and it can be so challenging you don't even know who you are. So we lose that connection, we lose that authenticity, and then for a lot of people, they lose that sense of meaning. I mean, it's hard to find something outside of the military life that can provide that same sense of meaning. And fulfillment. So that's, very, very challenging. So for those reasons, I say that even that, regardless of anything that somebody experienced while they were in, like, of course, there can be a lot of traumatic things or a lot of hard things that they need to process. But everybody, that transition in and of itself is a traumatic experience. I didn't feel aptly prepared for the emotional and the physiological and the spiritual sides of that transition before leaving the military. So it was a shock to me. And I see it's a shock to a lot of people. And I think that's what's driving the challenges that our veteran community is experiencing. Up to it, and I hear now the statistic is 44 veterans a day. It's not 22 anymore, but 44 veterans a day taking their own life. Twice as likely as the average population to struggle with substance use or mental health challenges than the regular population. I think it's because of that, because there's these unmet needs, there's these challenges that we face that aren't aptly recognized. So therefore, the services and the help and support that veterans face or veterans are experiencing is not helping them enough.
Yeah. I did a while back. I did one on homeless veteran crisis and stuff like that. 7% of the adult population claim a veteran status of some sort. You're talking like 13 or 14% of all adult homelessness is veterans.
Yeah.
Tell me how that statistic makes any sense at all with the people who literally are capable of going, learning and adapting all types of different career fields and jobs.
Yeah.
Can process information, have an understanding, aptitude, can listen to long form discussions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have extreme discipline, but they're homeless on the street because they literally could not transition into the civilian populace, and because they didn't have connection, meaning they didn't have anything that they were privy to during their career for long periods of time. I mean,
that's right.
It's insane.
That's what I think. It's this abrupt change, which becomes a downward spiral, because you don't go from DD 214 to homeless overnight. I mean, maybe some people do, but there's a path to it, and I think this is the downward spiral that people take. They lose those 3 fundamental needs, and then they don't, because it's such a shock, and because they don't have the tools and resources and support, they can't change course and get to a better place. So they just slowly go down. Some people it's faster than others, but they go down this downward spiral. A lot of times reaching for a substance or behavior beyond them to help deal with that pain or that void that's inside. And it's it's a very slippery slope, and it's a sad place a lot of people go down.
Do you want to go ahead and let the people know about what your organization's called, and how you started it, and what you do specifically with it?
Yeah, so again, just kind of sharing my own story. It was my own path as a veteran that really helped inspire this work. So, and I'm starting to share a little bit more now. But as I was transitioning out, I mean, I got to the place where I was thinking about taking my own life, to the point that it scared me. Like I didn't know if I knew it wasn't going to be that day, but I couldn't say with any kind of certainty how close I was to kind of crossing that line, and that scared the shit out of me, to the point where I sought a course correction and sought help. And through that journey over this next couple of years, this is what's helped me get really clear on the answer, because this whole time I'm asking myself that question, like, why do I feel that pain? Why do I feel that suffering? Like if you're bench pressing and your chest gets sore, it's really obvious to tell you like why your chest is sore. But if you're feeling an internal pain or internal void or a disconnection, it wasn't so clear to me, and I think it's not clear to a lot of people where that's coming from. So it took really over the years. That's what helped me see and understand these fundamental needs. So what I do now is working with the Thriving in Recovery curriculum that I developed, and delivering it just to veterans through a program called ValiantPath. And you can find out about that by going to valiantpath.vet. There's some more information about the different components of that and how it addresses specific veteran needs.
Garrett's losing the battle to his sniffles right now.
It's an anthrax vax, I think.
Catching up to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't worry. The lawsuit will come out in about another 40 years.
Yeah, 40, 50 years. Like my son will be watching something on TV. So, all right. Oh. It's like once you talk about it, then it's like I can't stop. Like you say the L word, like lice, and then all of a sudden your head starts itching, whether you got it or not. Yeah, he's talking about coughing or think about no, don't cough now. And it's
what is it? It's like that. Subverged thought, basically. It's like that drink was a lot stronger than it was and had no alcohol in it. What's it called?
It's shoot. Oh, I know what you're talking about. Placebo effect type thing.
Placebo effect.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, that's it.
There you go. Placebo effect.
All right, so with ValiantPath, what we do, what my focus is, helping veterans deal with these 3 specific challenges. So I talk about the connection, the authenticity, and the lack of meaning, and how to find that. Before you were talking about trying to find that sense of meaning in post military life. My number one recommendation for anybody is the surest path back to that sense of meaning is following the emotion of joy. Unfortunately, if you're using a lot of substances or behaviors to numb the pain that's inside of you, we can't selectively numb just bad emotions. So we numb everything. So for a lot of us, we have a hard time connecting with that emotion or that feeling of joy because it's numbed with everything else. Where it's been so long since we felt that we kind of recognize the experience when it comes out.
All good.
All right. Next time before we talk, I'm going to do like a full physical. I'm going to make sure that I have no cough or nothing.
Hey,
all right.
Hey. He's wanting to accept it today. All right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. All right. So following the emotion of joy. So joy is an emotion. All emotions that we have, it's a symbol or a signal to us, whether we're going to cough, whether something's good and we should seek more of it, or whether something's bad and we should. So if we have negative, whether it's depression, anxiety, sense of overwhelm, sense of fear. Like these are emotions trying to tell us like, hey, something's wrong with your situation, change it. Good emotions are saying like, hey, there's something right in this situation. Get some more of this in your life because this feels whether it's something that creates a sense of happiness, that fulfillment, that joy, that sense of meaning. But the simple emotion of joy, that elation that we feel when we're doing something that we're really, that's, kind of for it. Like when I'm on a mission trip down in, I'm feeling a lot of joy when I'm helping provide water to people, when I'm writing, when I'm in front of a room, when I'm speaking, like I'm feeling a sense of joy. To me, joy, that emotion is our indicator. It's our signal that this is something that we should be doing some more of. So if we follow that emotion of joy, it'll bring us to activities or endeavors that we can get involved in where we're going to find the sense of meaning.
So that's one thing that you're talking about right now, getting the joy, trying to find things that make you happy and pathways. Mm-hmm. And this can come with finding or starting a business, participating in someone's company, volunteering, whatever the case is. But this goes back to the other side of this too, which is like the addiction portion of this. So you don't want to get into the wrong lines of things that end up being detrimental towards your mental health, becoming obsessive. Because for example, like people who get overtly into volunteering when they don't have streams of revenue or something like that, they become homeless. Or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, because they're giving too much of their time and effort and they're not doing things to progress their own life. So I want to put that like the little thing out there.
Yeah, talk about the term.
Because I know people that are like that.
Yeah,
literally give all of their time and effort, and they don't do anything for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
They can't benefit in their life long for like a long term.
Certainly, yeah. I think there's nothing that's. I mean, I'm sure there are. Yeah, there's things that are inherently good, and there's things that are inherently bad. There's a lot of things that aren't neither, that are neither, and except for the context. So, like volunteerism and giving is not inherently just a good thing, and I think that's what you're talking about. There is a dark side to it too. There are people that get involved in giving, and it becomes an addiction because it's creating that negative cost or that consequence. And sometimes people do it not because it brings joy to their life, but because the act of doing it allows them to feel that they have enough value. And without sacrificing of themselves, they don't feel like they're worth enough to deserve anything in their own life. So they can get so out of balance, trying to seek that sense of self-worth, trying to prove their value to themselves and to everybody else by giving of themselves. And that can be a slippery slope as well. So one term I talk about is responsible benevolence. So be benevolent, do things for the service of other people, but you got to be responsible about it, both on an individual level, like not overextending yourself so much. I mean, if you're serving people, if you're working with people, you're always going to find somebody else that has a need. And it can be very tempting to try to do something to help that person as well. But we got to be responsible about it, because if we give too much of ourselves now that it takes a negative toll, that affects, we might help that person today, but that affects who we can help in the future. So we're choosing to sacrifice benefit that we can provide in the future to make that benefit now. One story, there's a nonprofit. It was a church in, I believe it was Rwanda, and I was on the phone with the guy that was the director of that, and they were not practicing responsible benevolence. They couldn't say no to anybody that came to them asking for help. So they overextended themselves. They ended up losing the building, the facility that they were in. So now this is dozens of meals that they can't provide to people for years to come because somebody came and they needed something, and instead of taking care of their own responsibilities, they met that guy's need for the day, but it came at a cost of what they could do for the rest of their life. Yeah. Same thing with us. If we overextend ourselves and we don't take care of our health, we don't take care of our personal responsibilities, we might be able to help a little bit more today, but we're not going to be able to help for years to come.
Yeah, like it's you give too much and you literally cannot prosper at all.
Yeah.
It's just like the reason why I paused the podcast, because I had things that just didn't work out online. I was like, I'm not going to be on the road because I'm spending time, money, traveling and stuff like that. I'll go back to home base, reset, refit, and come back out. And so that's like one little thing for me is like I'm 100% dedicated to traveling around the country without stopping, but things literally fell through and scheduling conflicts, whatever the case is. And I was like, oh, well, I guess I got
right. That's a sign. Sometimes you got to listen to those signs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think of when I talk about responsible benevolence, I talk about the giving tree. So the story of the giving tree. And I remember hearing that story when I was younger, and the message that it left with me, I was like, oh, there's always more that you can give. Like that's the message I took away from it. But looking back at it in hindsight, it's not a positive, uplifting story of what you should do. It's a warning about what you shouldn't do. So the story of the giving tree was that the young boy went to the tree, and I think I started out with him like climbing the tree and swinging on the tree and all the and then he got hungry, so the tree gave him apples, and then he needed to build a home, so he gave him the wood, the branches that he could use to build a shelter, and then eventually the tree gives everything, so that it's just this old man, comes to visit this tree that he used to play with as a child. And the only thing the tree has left is a stump in the ground. The old man, uses the tree to sit down. But the story is, it's a reminder to me of how many more kids could that tree not feed, or people could that tree not feed with apples, because it gave of the branches. So now it can't provide that. It can't provide shade anymore. It can't provide whatever it was going to provide, because it gave too much of itself, so that it came at an unbearable cost. So I think of that for us. Like, if we're going to give everything of us, it's going to come at an ultimate cost that we can't do a greater service in the future.
So, getting back to ValiantPath.
Yeah.
So, how did obviously you had the sense that you wanted to help veterans process and find their sense of meaning, the authenticity, and put them on the correct pathway, so they don't fall back on their service is the only thing they can accomplish, more or less, which is something that I don't know how people could do it by themselves. That's what I was getting to earlier. It's like people they want to do everything themselves, and relying on anybody else but themselves is like impossible for them to do. You know what I mean? So you create an organization that helps people process, because it's like a gap. It's like you can do it, but you can't do it all by yourself. Yeah. And if you do it all by yourself, you probably aren't going to be as happy, and you're going to use vices, and you're going to find some resistance in your own, literally from your own self, most likely, and from maybe the community or whoever else, but you're going to find resistance along the way. So, sorry, I'm tangenting.
No worries.
But I'm interested to know how it works, and what kind of
what the mechanisms are, and the process and everything.
Yeah.
So here's the sad thing, is that I really kind of launched ValiantPath a couple months ago, and since then I've been on the phone with 50 to 100 veterans that all are really interested, all need the support, and they realize, just kind of like that we talked about before, people starting that recovery journey, like they go to treatment after treatment after treatment, they're just not getting what they need. There's a lot of veterans that are suffering with these exact things. As I hear their stories, and they're saying like they're going to the VA, or they're going to the local things that are in their community, and it's not helping them make that change that they want. So that's why I designed ValiantPath, to really meet those needs of veterans. So we talk about connection, authenticity, and a sense of meaning. In the context of a veteran, we feel that, I call it veteran disconnect. So we feel that disconnect as soon as we become a veteran. We put on those masks, those veteran masks. Like, now I'm wearing a mask so I can show up in this new environment that I'm in. And then we suffer through that mission void. So if we don't have something that addresses those needs in that specific context that veterans face, then we're not doing the best that we can to serve veterans to get to that better place. And that's really what ValiantPath was designed to do. And it combines, combines some self-work, it combines some curriculum, some online training, it combines group coaching, one-on-one coaching, all designed to help, fulfill those specific needs to help individuals move forward.
I wish that, because during the transition out, I took TRS 3 times. Every time I was coming up on my contract, and ended up having to forcefully do it whenever they medically processed me out. But I remember sitting in there, and I felt like everybody was like, I'll just go out there and I'll get it done.
Right.
You know what I mean? There was no blocks. No one had any structure. Well, not many people had very many structures. Maybe some of the retirees were closer because maybe they had invested in ventures, had business friends, especially younger people who did 1 or 2 tours, or one contract, or commissioned, maybe did 8 years, whatever. Like, they're getting out, and you have a lot of tools in your belt, but there's no direction for you, and you once you get out there, you're going to be on your own. Yeah, I think that's one thing that they harp on it now more than they did the first time I went through the transition programs. Is hey, you will eventually have to be on your own, and you can rely on these networks and these tools.
Yeah.
Or you can go out there and try to do it all on your own. And, it's like the whole thing. 10% of you might get it.
Right.
That 10% might be successful, and that other portion of that 10%,
Right.
you might be happy.
Yeah.
You might be fulfilled.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's a very small
Sure.
portion of the population that don't, and we're already a small portion of the population already is. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I found it.
No, I agree. I mean, going through that TRS or the TAP classes, I mean, a lot of what was offered to me didn't prepare me for any of these three things that I'm talking about. That's why I understand there's such big needs, because like I wasn't emotionally prepared for that change. And nobody had mentioned to me that I was going to suffer from these three things. So an ultimate kind of goal or dream for me would be, if everybody transitioning out, there's 200,000 new veterans every single year. If they could at least have like an hour class talking about these three things, I think that would make it a tremendous impact, or better prepare them for moving beyond it. All I remember from TAP classes was some ideas on how to like change my resume to speak in civilian terms, and where I could find an apartment, or where I could look for jobs.
Yep. Online, build your resume, do these little things. I talked to buddies of mine, they're business owners, before I got out and stuff like that, and they're like, even though now there's successful entrepreneurs, they're like, I was happy when I got out. I literally didn't have a sense of purpose in my life, and I was making money, and like I was successful in my own right.
And that's like a double-edged sword too, because now it's like even more concerning. It's like, hold on, if I'm making money, like I thought, like I'm doing everything society said I'm supposed to do to be happy, but I feel miserable inside.
Well, and that brings it back to your servitude to your country. Mm-hmm. It's like, you're not making tons of money in the military. Right. So thank you. Yeah, money can buy happiness to a certain point, but if you're not fulfilled,
once your basic needs are met, but then any like extra money beyond that, it's not really doing a huge change. Yeah.
Okay. So
ValiantPath. Here we go. So you can learn more about ValiantPath at valiantpath.vet. And I'll keep that site updated. I'll give you the hyperlink and everything. But I do want to talk about recovery reset, and we can talk. And you had other questions first.
RIM?
So no.
That's regenerative imaging.
Yeah, that's RIM. So that's one of the things we do in ValiantPath. So we can talk a little bit about that. But I certainly want to make a plug for recovery reset.
Go ahead.
Because we can do it before the end, or we do it right at the end, because this is something that I created it. It's designed as a 10 or a 15 day, a reset, emotional, physiological, and spiritual reset. It's something that you can do in 15 minutes or less each day for 10 to 15 days. But you follow this protocol, and it'll make a tremendous impact, a tremendous difference in your life, and the way that you feel each day, and the energy that you have, the focus that you have, how you feel about yourself, the level of stress that you're carrying, and you can do it in just 15 minutes a day. So, all right, that'll keep everybody tuned till the end, and then we'll tell how we get that. That was a program I created. I used to sell it for $500 for people to be involved in, because it makes such a huge impact. But for any of your listeners, I'll show a link that you can share with them so they can get it for free. So they can just go sign up and have free access to that. So we'll talk about what that is, a little bit more detail, and then how they can get it. First, you want to talk about RIM. So RIM is one of the components of the ValiantPath. So ValiantPath is, like I said, it's included with, there's Thriving in Your Recovery. So the curriculum that I developed over a number of years is part of that. They get access to that. They get one-on-one coaching, group coaching, and then RIM sessions. So RIM is called Regenerating Images and Memory. It's an acronym for Regenerating Images and Memory. It's a therapeutic coaching tool that allows very safe, effective, and quick emotional processing of things that need to be addressed, emotions that are stuck. So there is a relationship between us, the emotions that we're feeling in our body, the places that we're getting stuck in our life, the things that are showing up, the triggers and everything that's showing up that's creating a consequence or a result or a limitation that we don't want in our life. There's some emotional connection to that, and that emotion usually comes from some experience. And RIM is a very effective and powerful way to quickly access and then process whatever that thing is, that emotion, that energy, that limitation that's holding us back. And it does it by empowering. It's all based on the premise that we are whole, fully capable, fully functioning creatures as we are created. We have the capacity and the ability to heal ourselves. So if I were to cut my arm right now, then I would have my immune system would take over, and it would fight off any infections, and it would eventually heal that wound. We also have the capacity to heal emotionally. So anything that happens to us that strains us outside of our normal capacity, our emotional operating system has the capacity to heal whatever that is. Unfortunately, in our lifestyle and our culture, we put a lot of blocks, or we do a lot of things to prevent ourselves from healing that emotional challenge, that emotional charge. As I said earlier, emotions, as I understand it, are signals to us that either something's good, get more of that, or something's bad, stay away from that. A lot of times we'll feel a negative emotion and we might have this reaction that I don't want to feel that negative emotion, so I'm either going to avoid it or I'm going to bottle it up and deal with that shit later because I can't handle it right now. Unfortunately, when we bottle it up, it starts to create, that emotion, it's an expression, it's a signal that wants to be shared with us. And if we're not listening to that signal, it's going to keep sharing it over and over and over again. And I think that's a lot of the symptoms that we have, or a lot of the challenges that we have when we have repeat behaviors, repeat challenges, repeat limitations, and things that are creating outcomes in our life that we don't want, whether that's addictions, whether that's behavioral problems, whether that's situations, challenges that we can't excel in. There's some emotional component to that. So I bring that all up because there's different ways to tap into and to process emotions. And there's a lot of self-care things that we can do. There's a lot of therapies, a lot of modalities that people can do. What I've found most effective and most beneficial in my own life is this process called RIM, or regenerating images in memory. It's a beautiful thing because it allows our natural emotional operating system to do the work that it's designed to do by providing the space for it to do it safely, effectively, and very easily. Mm-hmm. So an example of if we have an experience, and this goes back to the trauma discussion, everything that we talked about before. If we have an experience in our life, many of the things that we struggle with or that are challenges later in life stem back to some experience that we experienced in early childhood. And there's other things that can affect us, but for a lot of it, it can all be tied or associated back to something.
It's called repressive memories, basically.
So that's part of it. That's an element of it. But basically, it's also just our natural learning and development process. So as an infant, we're born into this world. We don't know anything. Then we experience something, we witness things, we observe things, and we come to conclusions about it. Sometimes those conclusions are true and they're helpful. Sometimes they're not true. So if we are a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, and we experience somebody yelling at us, maybe the teacher's yelling at us and we feel like we're always being picked on, maybe kids are yelling at us, maybe we have a parent or a caretaker that's treating us a certain way, we don't have the contextual understanding to know, like, hey, he or she is just an asshole and they're just going to be mean to us. Like, our contextual understanding is they're treating me this way. We don't fall out of love with that person or reduce our love or respect for that adult because from our perspective, like, okay, they're older, they're wiser, they know what's going on. If they're treating me a certain way, it's got to be because I'm defective. So we can internalize a lot of things that way. We have a traumatic experience as a child. We come to a conclusion about that traumatic experience that a lot of times is not a positive or constructive conclusion to it. Whether it's the challenges that we face, whether it's the traumas, the lack of the developmental trauma, the lack of having a safe, supportive environment where we can grow. So there's one example I had when I was about 10 years old or so. I went camping with my dad, and it was like a campground type thing. And we set up our campsite. My dad, was still had to work, so he had to run back and kind of check in on a payphone. So there was a payphone maybe a football yard away from where we were. So I'm there as a 9, 10, 11-year-old or so. My dad can, still see me, but I'm there by myself. And I end up having an accident. So I messed my pants, and very embarrassing, very challenging experience for me. But what I realized, and through some of what RIM has illuminated for me in an experience, was that moment I came to a conclusion or an understanding about the world. Again, my prefrontal cortex is developing. I'm still learning, I'm still learning about the world and the truths and the values and beliefs and everything. But at that experience, I had come to a conclusion that, okay, sometimes in this world we have basic needs and we can't always count on those people that we would want to count on. So how does that forecast as you look forward in your life? Well, if you carry that belief, this belief that I have from this experience, when we create a belief as a child and we don't go back and question that or process that effectively to come to a positive or constructive conclusion to that belief, a lot of times we never go back and challenge those things that we created as a child. So it'll continue to affect us for the rest of our life. And one of the reasons that any other therapy, coaching, talking with friends never would have helped me in the way that a RIM session did, is because I never, as an adult, would have associated any of the problems or the challenges that I had with some experience that I had at 9, 10 years old camping with my dad. I would never think there was any kind of correlation to that. Through the RIM process and through a lot of what I learned about our values and beliefs and emotional operating system, I realized that at that day I came to a conclusion that you can't always count on those people that are near you, that you would want to count on, those loved ones, those caretakers. You can't always count on them if you have a basic human need. And what that has done is it had made me isolated. It had made me not believe in people, had made me not feel, trust people or feel safe and secure, even when surrounded by people that were there to, watch my back. And that created some isolation. It created fear, created limitations in the way that I perceived myself and what was possible in the world. And it had these cascading effects that went on through the rest of my life and created a lot of the blocks, a lot of limitations that I've experienced as an adult.
So, how does the RIM program work, and like, what's the mechanism of that? Because that's one I was reading into it. And I was like, I don't know how this even works. I get the construct of what the end goal is, which is for you to help process things, trauma from throughout your life, or just advanced things that maybe change your psychosis, and how you utilize or see information or observe reality. So I get the purpose of it, but I want to know how it's conducted.
Yeah, absolutely. So for anybody that might be listening to this thinking like, oh, would I benefit from a RIM session? Well, the question is there anything in your life that's not turning out the way that you want it to? And if that's like relationships that aren't seem to be working, professional progress that's not taking place, self-love, compassion, whatever that is, if there's something in your life that's not the way that you want it to be, then yes, you could benefit from a RIM session.
Drinking water right now?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, both at the same time. We got to time that. We got to like green light it when you can drink, and then when I can drink. So the way a RIM session works, and I said it's a therapeutic coaching tool. So it's not a clinical tool, and by design and the way that it functions, the way that it operates, specifically, it's a coaching tool or a non-clinical tool. Though it helps provide very therapeutic and emotional healing outcomes from the process. But the reason that it's really classified as a non-clinical tool, clinical tools, as I understand it, if we were to sit down, you were a clinician and I was coming to seek help from you, whether it's therapy, counseling, whatever that is, when we sit down in the room together, it's recognized that I'm the client, I'm seeking help, you're the expert. So you're the one that's going to decide what's wrong with me, provide that advice, provide whatever counsel, whatever direction to help me get to a better place in my life. With a RIM session, if you were to come to me for a RIM session and we sit down in the room together, we recognize that the one that's the expert is your subconscious and your emotional operating system. So that's why it's not, that's why it's not a clinical service that's being done. It's not, but through the process, as a facilitator of a RIM session, really all I'm doing is helping you experience something by providing the safe space, using some tools in a RIM-like manner to help you experience something that's going to be, profoundly or fundamentally, altering in a positive way for you. What that would look like is, coming together. I do RIM sessions over Zoom, over the phone. I like to do them in person because I like to feel that energy or that sense of connection, but they're just as effective doing it over the phone or over Zoom. But it's a process, sometimes as short as 30, 40 minutes, sometimes as long as an hour and a half or 2 hours. But it's a process where you go through, where you become more aware of, it's more about body sensing, body awareness, and then finding emotional energy that's stuck in your body, and then providing you space and a process to learn what that emotional energy is about, or what your body wants you to know. A lot of it is based on metaphor. A lot of it's based on symbolism, and it leverages the creativity of our brain. That's one of the things that makes it so effective, and so much more effective than many other modalities. If you and I were to sit here and try to talk about your problem, or a challenge that you're facing, we're using our rational mind. We're cognitively processing symptoms and then things that you're observing and trying to make a rational connection to something that might have happened that we can then, work on or try to mitigate to get you to a better place. The emotions that reside in our body that are affecting the way that we show up, the way that we feel all the time, the way that we act, and the way that we behave, those are not operating in the same way in our brain as the cognitive processing, our rational mind.
Yeah.
So that's why that's one of the big limitations, and why it can be very challenging, why people go to therapy or go to counseling for years and don't seem to be having the progress that they would want or expect, because it's our rational mind and our irrational mind, or our creative mind or analytical mind, trying to create a solution to something that is only residing in a part of our brain that doesn't actively communicate through articulation or through words. So there's a translation that's taking place. I'm feeling an emotion. I'm trying to put words to it, to articulate it to you, and then you're trying to understand what I'm feeling. But there's a lot of disconnect. There's a lot of translation of language that needs to take place there, which is a big limitation. With RIM, however, it's designed in a way that facilitates a process for you that's whole brain and whole body engaged. So there's a lot of imagery. There's a lot of the imagination. We bring creativity and the imagination into it for a lot of it, because the creativity and imagination is much more closely associated with the part of our brain where emotions are. So as we can use that creative processing and that ability that we can have a healing experience or a fundamentally shifting, illuminating experience, and not have to articulate things into words. I mean, though that can be a part of the RIM process. So that's why it's much more effective. That's why people that seek RIM support, whether it's RIM sessions, they can typically in 3 to 5 sessions have fundamental shifts and completely redefined, realities of their life, because they get so much from that process.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think I think the whole RIM construct's interesting because you're not going into a session with an end goal for somebody to diagnose you and prescribe a certain pathway. It's kind of like you're going in there and you're trying to trust yourself to figure out a process through utilizing tools and systems to help you. It's like realizing that meditation is good for you, right? It helps you relieve stress and tension. You know what I mean? Like
absolutely,
it's like one tool in this large bucket of tools that don't have to be prescribed and then harped on. And then the thing about therapy that always bothered me, and I mean, I don't
dog in therapy all together. Like I've had therapy and it's been helpful, and I know it helps a lot of people and it can help a lot of different things.
Yeah, but the thing that always bothered me is that you have to come back with progress, right? You have to show and you have to articulate progress to somebody, but you don't know how to articulate things because that's not what you do as a normal human being.
Sure.
You just try to articulate how you feel,
right?
How you process things.
Especially not as a Marine. I mean, come on.
Fuck, are you serious?
Yeah.
Like, so if I went to see a psychologist, especially if I was trying to go to a different unit, go to training or whatever, when I wasn't telling that motherfucker a thing.
That's right.
Why would I do that? Because that's going to limit my capability to be able to actually go and accomplish what I want to get done.
Right.
Because they're going to think I'm a crazy person.
Right.
Or I have problems.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it could be just a simple thing, but it could be like, how much do you drink a week? Oh, you have more than 5 drinks a week.
Yeah, we know what the chart says. So it's like 3 to 4 alcoholic beverages a week.
You have 25 drinks a month? Oh, no. You're an alcoholic. We need to get you into some kind of discovery programs. That way we can get you treatment. And it's like, I need to go train. I need to pull.
Sure.
I need to. There's no break period. So I think it's interesting the RIM program and how you guys are utilizing it. So I read.
Our body has so much intelligence. The RIM is just beautiful because it helps us tap into that intelligence that we have, and that's a fascinating thing. It's so fascinating as a facilitator watching like people's experience, because a lot of times, I mean, we always ask her, we'll prime a session like, hey, what's going on? It's just something that you want to work with. And somebody might be like, oh yeah, I've got everybody at work's a jerk and I just hate the work environment. Okay, cool. So we're going to go in this RIM session. We're going to get, in touch with something, or we're going to process some emotion that hadn't been processed before. And you realize it had absolutely nothing to do with work. It had something to do with, I don't know, something that happened on the playground when you were a child, or some other thing that's in your life that's creating that outcome. Our body knows what needs to be addressed. So and that's the other limitation, like as a clinician, the clinicians I've worked with and what I've seen through that process myself is the clinician trying to decide what's the root of this issue that you're facing, and how do we mitigate that. With RIM, we just let the body knows. There's no decision. The body knows what the root of whatever issue is that we're facing. And the body knows what issue is actually most urgently needs to be addressed. So we might think that the fact that we can't lose that, 5 pounds that we're trying to lose is what we need to address. Whereas our body knows that there's something maybe seemingly so unrelated from that is more pertinent that's going to, help us out in our life.
Yeah, I definitely think it's very interesting. Before we get too far in, now you can circle back and talk about what you were trying to talk about a minute ago.
Which one was that? There's
With,
once the 501c3 thing or the
we need
that's a dead
we
story now.
need to, okay.
That's a dead story. That's fine. So recovery reset. Is that what you're talking about?
Recovery reset.
All right. So recovery reset is 4 daily practices that you can do every day in less than 15 minutes. And these are the things that I've found over 10, 15 years that are most efficacious and most it's minimum effective dose, but also creates the greatest significant change or impact.
This comes through ValiantPath, right?
Correct. So yes, with ValiantPath. So recovery reset is a very small, like kind of commercial sized version of something we do more in depth in ValiantPath. It's the first thing that we do in ValiantPath because it helps us build a foundation from them we can work from. So before we even get into self-esteem and working on emotional resilience, we start with this because this gives us the greatest foundation to show up as a better version of ourselves. And it helps people get a really good, win very quickly and feel very different in a short period of time, which keeps them motivated to kind of keep going through it.
Yeah.
So the recovery reset is 4 activities that you do each day. If anybody wants, there's going to be a link in the show notes. I'll provide a link to you so that they can go access this for free. 4 daily practices. Some of them are going to sound a little crazy. I just encourage everybody, just try them, do them as prescribed, try them. For anybody that goes to that website and enrolls in the recovery reset, they'll get a 10-day workbook that they can go through each day. And then there's audio lessons for these 4 different acts that we do each day. The first thing is a cold shower. If you haven't done a cold shower, get the hell over yourself and just try it. The benefits from it are phenomenal. What I mean when I say a cold shower is you take your normal shower and then at the end of it, you just turn off the hot water, crank up the cold, and stand there for anywhere from 15 seconds up to 2 minutes and just allow that cold water to run over your body. You're going to feel shock. It's going to feel uncomfortable.
Coach routines.
Yep. Yeah. So many benefits. I mean, the more you learn about it, so many benefits. Andrew Huberman, Dr. Huberman's talking about it all the time. You can listen to his stuff. But the benefits, it's a tremendous emotional reset that happens to you. And the way I envision it, or what, conceptually, what I see happening is it puts our body under like an immense amount of stress, so that we can that rubber band can snap back to like a normal place, a reset or a rested place. So if even you go through that shock, you feel very uncomfortable. People don't believe if they haven't tried it, but when you get out of the shower, you're not even cold. Like your body adjusts and adapts to it. You're not like shivering when you get out of the shower. But it helps so much with that reset of our emotional state. And what I started to realize very quickly when I started doing this every day is that my normal state was more stressed than like complete zero. So I don't know, on a scale of 1 to 100, I was experiencing my normal rest state was not 0. It was some level of stress that I was carrying every day. And when I started to do the cold shower each day, I would feel less of that.
It's funny that you say that, because it's like walking in, you get all these injuries and stressors and stuff like that in the military. You're like, doc's like, how are you feeling? You're like, oh yeah, about normal. They're like, what's your normal? Like, oh, all this hurts. All these problems. They're like, yeah, that's not normal.
Yeah, that's
like,
not
normal
okay.
0. Remember
right.
that? Like,
that's right.
Normal's not 5, bro.
Yeah.
Normal's 0, dude. So that's funny that you say it, because I remember walking in, I'm like getting treatment, and physical therapist, and she's like, how you feeling? I'm like, 6 today. Like, pretty bad numbness.
Yeah,
pretty good.
Sure.
She's like, it's not normal. Like, normal's 0, dude. Like, oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Sure.
So, this is funny. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's work. No, that's great. So if you need any more encouragement to start doing the cold shower, and again, there's like an 8-minute like audio lesson on how to do it and the benefits of it. But real quick, so it creates a huge dopamine response. It changes the brown fat levels in our body. I can't remember if it increased or decreased, but anyway, it helps increase our metabolism. So we end up burning some of that subcutaneous or fat stores. Huge dopamine release, increases the sense of focus, decreases the level of stress. Many benefits. If you want your skin to look better, it makes your skin look better. All of those things. So just do it. Just get over yourself. Just do it if you're not doing it. And you'll very quickly experience benefits. So that's one. There's 2 different journaling prompts or 2 different journaling things that are derived from a lot of what I learned in positive psychology. So focusing on personal empowerment. So we talked about reaching beyond our body to a substance or a behavior to create some kind of internal feeling that we want to feel. A recovery journey to me is finding everything that we need to feel whole and lovable and perfect as we are from inside of us. So there's a couple journaling prompts that kind of guide our attention back into our wholeness, which increases self-efficacy, our self-confidence, and our self-love. And then finally, one exercise that you can do before you go to bed to help if you ever struggle with negative self-talk, like shaming yourself or talking down to yourself or feeling like you're not enough, feeling like you didn't do enough today, feeling like you splurged too much, you indulged too much, you watched too much TV, whatever that is. If you ever struggle with that internal dialogue or that voice in a negative context, then this last exercise is called a mirror exercise. It's something you do right before you go to bed. There's nothing I know that's more effective or more or works more quickly than a mirror exercise to improve your confidence, your sense of self-love, and the way that you show up overall. So these 4 things all together, you can do them less than 15 minutes a day. Do it for 10 to 15 days. It'll be a fundamental shift in the way that you feel about yourself and your life.
Yeah, I was doing your shout out video the other day.
Yeah.
I recorded 50 times.
Nice. Good.
For a 2.5-minute video, however long it was, whatever. It took me about 50 times. I remember like resetting. Cause I was like, I fucking hate that. I hate that.
Yeah.
I looked and I was like, oh, I'm fucking balding. What the fuck is going on in my life right now?
Yeah.
I was getting pissed at myself. And I was like, that's not productive.
Right. That's not helping. That's not helping.
Jordan. Like, just get it done.
That's right.
You're good. This isn't your first rodeo. You can do this. And I recorded like one long video where if I messed up, I just didn't restart. I took a breath, thought about it, continued.
There you go.
But like just doing those things, and I also started doing cold showers and all that other stuff. And I mean,
it's huge, all right? I mean,
bananas. Like, I get up, I stretch for 10, 15 minutes in the morning or whatever, and then I get a shower, wash myself for about 4 or 5 minutes or whatever, get the heat, and I turn on about a minute and a half.
Yeah.
I mean, because especially
and this time of year,
it's cold.
It's a
like
new game.
35 degrees.
Yeah.
Like convulsing by the time I get out. I get out and I'm like, not cold. I feel really, really, really good.
Yeah, you get a huge flood of dopamine. So cocaine, when you take cocaine, you get a flood of dopamine. Adderall creates a flood of dopamine in your brain. Cold shower creates a flood of dopamine in your brain and in your body. So
awesome.
It feels really good. And I rarely miss it, but if I do miss a day or a couple days in a row, I notice that I'm just more agitated throughout the day. Like I don't feel as calm and collected, and little things that wouldn't normally irritate me become irritants.
Yeah. I definitely enjoy it a lot. I used to do it more when I was in like a long time ago, and I quit doing it because I was like, this is not really doing thing.
Right.
Because I think I was so active, I was actually doing stuff where I was like processing stress out of my body every day, going to the gym.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of other things.
Huge benefiter, but like now that I don't go
3
hours,
you don't have those other outlets. Those outlets.
So it definitely benefits a lot.
Good.
Sorry.
Oh no.
Right,
good.
Yeah, I gotta look at my list now. So we went through quite a lot. You're a very interesting person, you know.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate this opportunity. I love the long form too. Like I hate doing 10, 15, 20 minute, interviews or videos because.
Well, I don't think that discussions and civil discourse should be held that way. You look at like all the media nowadays. You can't really make a informed decision if you're going to trust somebody, if you're going to utilize a service or whatever the case is. That's the reason why like people go to the store, they buy crap food. They don't know because it's all in front of them. They don't any research or whatever the case is. Like, I want to inform people because you're going to be giving them, someone in the local area or somebody who wants to donate to your nonprofit or somebody who's inspired by you, may want to take you on as a mentor, reaches out to you. I want them to know through this discussion that like, hey, he's a trustworthy person. He invests his time. He really is a thoughtful person. So, plus you just are. So, I mean, it just is what it is. I mean, you and I had one discussion at a welcoming,
that was Christmas last year, right?
2021. No, right at the beginning of 22, Lisa moved in, your neighbor.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, she had the welcome.
But yeah, it was a year ago, Christmas. So we're coming, because that was your Christmas party.
Oh, yeah. Well,
so it's probably a year to like the week.
Yeah. And then I was like, I want to have a long form discussion on the podcast with this guy, but he's very, very busy. But I wanted to, before I forget, I want to get into, we talked your public speaking, we talked your for-profit businesses a little bit. I want to go through maybe your books and then like some of because you still fly civil aviation.
Oh yeah,
and some civil aviation stuff. So
I had a miserable 5 years from getting out of the military until I started flying with the Civil Air Patrol again. And I realized like, it's because I love it so much and I'm not up there. So I found I had avoided getting back to fly. I knew I was going to fly for a career after the military, and I avoided getting back to it until I could have the time and the money to invest to make sure I was at least flying like 5 hours a month, because I feel like you don't maintain the level of proficiency if you're not flying, at least that much, 50, 60 hours a year. So I was waiting until I had that time, then I just kept, pushing it back and making excuses, not doing it. So with the Civil Air Patrol, it's volunteer work, so it's a little bit more of that volunteerism, but at least I get to fly for free and go support some missions.
What's the mission of the
So Civil Air Patrol, it's an Air Force auxiliary, and they pick up a variety of different missions. One of the biggest programs they do is a cadet program. So there's kind of like the junior ROTC. They have a cadet program of people that are looking forward to either military service or aviation, that are interested in those things. Through the cadet program, you get an opportunity to fly in an aircraft, so you get some orientation flights. So that's a big part of the mission. But then the Air Force can task us to do anything else to support them. One of the most common things is local search and rescue. So if you have somebody that's disappeared, whether it's somebody with Alzheimer's, dementia that's kind of disappeared that need to be looked for, or whether there's an ELT or emergency locator transponder that's gone off either on a boat or on an aircraft, might be a potentially downed aircraft. That could be something that a Civil Air Patrol unit's launched to go find. Also, like during COVID, they were used a lot for transport of COVID vaccines. So when the vaccines or even the test kits came out, it's a lot easier. They found it to be a lot easier than instead of trying to truck them or van them to more rural or remote areas of the country, that they had Civil Air Patrol. You can throw a bunch of the kits in the back of a Cessna 172 and go fly it to some places. So they're used for that. And then also commonly used for damage assessments of natural disasters or storms. So when there's a major storm in the Carolinas or in Florida, most recently in Puerto Rico, then they launched some Civil Air Patrol aircraft to go out there and just kind of fly overhead and take some pictures and everything, and to get some assessments.
Yeah. I was wondering if you had to switch platforms or what the case was in your new aircraft.
So fortunately, they have 172s and 182s. And when I talked, man, everything comes back. So we were talking about IFS, initial flight school, the thing that I had to do up in Virginia before I even went down to flight school. That was all in a Cessna 172. So it's very different than flying the C-130, and it was an awkward kind of transition to get back to flying a little aircraft. But yeah, at least I had a little bit of time in it, so it wasn't too hard to get back to.
Nice, that's super sick. No, yeah, I was wondering because you mentioned it when we were talking. I was like, "What? You're always doing something new,
Yeah.
Trying something out." I didn't know what the mission of the organization was, so it's pretty cool. I like people don't really understand how much humanitarian aid the military and some of these civil agencies give to the United States and in countries abroad as well.
Yeah, sure.
Of course, it's pretty insane. Like, I was a part of the MU originally.
Yeah.
I'm still upset that I never got to do a humanitarian mission.
Oh yeah, me too.
I'm still upset.
I know. I want that humanitarian medal. Like, it's like, come on, because that's such a, we have that capability. Let's go do it. When somebody's experiencing their worst day, like, let's go help them out and do something.
Yeah, I got before my career was over, I got the Armed Forces Service Medal. For my last deployment. We did a bunch of humanitarian assistance to local hospitals, donating beds and all sort of stuff. It was pretty rad. It was during COVID, of course.
Yeah.
And then, but it's like pretty amazing some of the feats you get to do while you're active duty, and then now that you're out, you gotta find other avenues to benefit people.
And I think that catches a lot of veterans off guard too, because we are so capable, we can do so much, and then that abrupt transition to the civilian world where we get a little lost, or if we don't find something quickly enough, a path quickly enough to get on to start making that progress, then we can kind of spin our wheels for a little bit, and then that very quickly erodes our self-esteem. This comes back to something that I was going to mention, and this is speaking from the context of the Marine Corps, but one of the reasons I think our self-esteem and our self-efficacy. So self-esteem, it's our estimate of ourself. So if you have high self-esteem, then you have high confidence that you can overcome any unforeseen challenge, that's presented today. If you have high self-efficacy, that's more future-focused. So if you have a high self-efficacy, then you have great confidence in your ability to overcome a future challenge or obstacle that you might face that you can't, predict right now. One of the challenges that I experienced when coming out of the Marine Corps was that a lot of that confidence and that self-efficacy kind of went away. And what I realized was, this is kind of thinking back to being on active duty, especially a young Marine. I mean, really at any level, there's like this dichotomy. There's this weird relationship that we have with emboldening us and picking us up and our confidence, and also tearing us down. So it's true that, for one, as Marines, we're taught that we're better than everybody. We're stronger, we're more powerful, we're more capable than everybody else. They give us they build up this superhuman or Superman complex, because you need that level of confidence to do some of the things that we, experience some of the things, or do some of the things that we have to do. So at one hand, like, we feel great about ourselves and we walk around with our chest pumped out and everything. On the other hand, no matter how good you are as a Marine, you're still a piece of shit as a Marine. Like, you could still do one, you could still do better. And and you need to figure out how to, like, unscrew yourself so you can do better. You should be able to do one more pull up. You should be able to run 10 seconds faster. You should be able to do one more ammo can lift, like whatever that is. So there's like this weird tension that we're struggling with all the time. Well, the thing that happens when you transition out of the military, a lot of that upward force that was holding you up and filling up your self-confidence and self-esteem is the fact that you wore the uniform and that you were a Marine. Now you lose that, but you don't lose the negative self-talk. You don't lose the self-deprecation. You don't lose all those voices in your head that are telling you to be better, that you're not good enough as you are. So you lose everything that was pulling you up, but you don't lose all that shit that was pulling you down.
So this was something it fell off earlier. This is something I wanted to say, and it goes into the holistic view of military service, is something I focused on hardcore with my Marines and the people that I served with. I started on joint forces and stuff like that as well. Is you got these professional developments in your service, but nobody personally develops the way that you're supposed to personally develop. Whether that's education, off duty, volunteering, setting yourself up for success in the future by investing in a business or stocks, or just putting money back, whatever the case is, and then you get out and then you don't have financial security, you don't have any personal development skills, where you went to college, you put money back, you invested in a business, or you even really did any deep level of research into what, or even experience anything that you would, like, self-evidently be interested in.
Yeah.
Because what you know is what you did in your service, and that's all you really have to understand.
Sure.
Because we were talking about earlier is that you come in at such a young age most of the time, and you are not a developed human being.
Right.
Like, psychologically, you're not developed.
Sure.
You're just literally transitioning from your pre-adolescent to teenage, then you're literally a very young adult.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out.
So much of your personal identity is wrapped up in what you experience and what you learn in the military.
Yep. So I think it's pretty interesting. I want to say that it's like most people do not get that opportunity to personally develop, and then most units used to. It's a little bit better now. They would say, "Hey, like, the mission of the Marine Corps, finding commander intent is more important than you taking the week of leave to go experience that volunteer program, or do whatever, go to college, whatever the case is, And if you ever were in any way, shape, or form in trouble, or you did anything wrong ever single time, like, you get treated, get ostracized, and then they will not let you personally.
Yeah, you catch a DWI and, like, now you're the redheaded stepchild. It's like, hold on, I was drinking with all you guys. Like, I just got pegged. Like, what the heck's going on here?
Yeah,
you don't want anything to do with me.
I was driving for you guys.
Yeah, I was coming home from the CO's damn party that he made me go to, and now, it's silly. But I love your point there about that personal development aspect of it. So this is one thing I think about often, is that for most individuals, you stop your personal development when you either get out of high school or you get out of college. And the level of growth and the level of new knowledge and new skill sets and everything that you develop pretty much flatlines after that point, and then slowly starts to deteriorate. In the military, it's very, like we were talking, it's very simple. It's not always easy, very simple to know, like, what you got to do next. So once you got your MOS and there's certain things you got to be proficient at, what you got to do to get your next promotion. There's it's essentially a curriculum for you to follow, and it's a very clear-cut path forward to for your growth. Same thing in college or in high school. Like, at the start of a class, they're going to give you a curriculum. You know what you got to do. What you have to know, and how long it's going to take. So having that ladder to climb, or that path that's laid out for you to follow, it makes it a lot easier to make that progress. And then we can develop the skills and everything along the way. You get out in the real world, like, there's no path. There's nobody even telling you where the path is. So we grow a lot. We can grow a lot, in school. We can grow a lot in the military. We can be very proficient. We can get a lot of great shit done. But that's because we have kind of like that. We have that intent. We have that North Star. We have that direction to go into. But when you're out in the civilian, you don't have that curriculum. Like, yeah, it can be very challenging, and that that comes back to the self worth and the self confidence and everything. But if you don't have that path to move forward, a lot of times people ask me when they learn that I do coaching or work with people that are in addiction recovery, like, why the hell do you work with people in addiction recovery? Like, of all the people that you could work with, why would you select that population? Because they're thinking of all the negative connotations, the negative things. Like, these people are really suffering, they're really challenging, they're not doing great things. Why would you want to work with them? Because what I realize is this is why I love people in recovery, because for most adults, like after that time of college or high school, or they're not continuing to evolve. They're not continuing to look at themselves objectively and try to figure out ways that they can improve. You find somebody that's really working in their recovery, these are the only adults that are like looking at themselves like, okay, these are the challenges that I have. These are the struggles that I have. These are the defects that I have. How can I become a better human being? Because they're on a path to do that. And that's beautiful to see when you see adults that are questioning themselves and trying to find ways that they can grow and they can become a better person.
Yeah, that's awesome. I wasn't ever interested in working in the nonprofit world growing up or any of that stuff, and I honestly, if I didn't get in the trades or get into the military, I really didn't have a clue where I wanted to be. Yeah. And as I came through, they had that that kind of thought process that you have like the 90-day idea processing until you're like freaking like 40,
yeah,
where you come with an idea and then you give it up like after 90 days, like
yeah,
that part of who you are, that development. Like, I was interested in like petroleum engineering because I was like, I could make a lot of fucking money, and also I like working with the environment.
Yeah.
Oh well, I like just doing simple farm work stuff. Maybe I'll just get back into farm work. I like construction. I like trades of all sorts. Who do I want to be? And then like I went through a few of those cycles, and I realized I don't have a fucking clue which direction I want to take when I get out of the military. And that's the reason why when I was sitting down, I told you this offline.
Yeah. Alexa, cancel.
I was telling you this offline, but like it was like the first time whenever I knew I was going to get processed out in the military medically, it was like the first time where I came to the realization like, oh, I have to pick a path for the first time in a decade.
Sure, that's right.
I have to become an individual instead of a part of this unit cohesiveness.
Yeah. With
this shared objective.
Yeah, for the first time since you were like 17, talking to the recruiter, and you decided like, all right, this is my MOS. Like that path was like laid out for you. When the recruiter convinced me that I wanted to be a combat accountant instead of an MP, like I didn't really have to make any more decisions after that point. Like it was pretty clear laid out.
Well, you know what's funny? He may have made you a combat accountant, but realistically, if you didn't take that path,
I know,
you wouldn't have became a pilot.
100%.
You wouldn't
absolutely
have had your daughter. You wouldn't have had your son.
I probably have been in jail before that August recruitment date or the MEPS processing date showed up.
So okay, sorry, getting off
track,
man. It's a good conversation.
I'm enjoying it.
But do you have any other big things you want to discuss?
I'll leave you with some final thoughts. It's coming up to carpool time, so we'll have to wrap this up soon. But anybody so a couple things. If anybody would reach out, I would be the ideal person to reach out to, and you're welcome to reach out if you don't have terrible handwriting like mine and you can read what your notes say. So if you want to work in the nonprofit world and you just want some ideas on what that entails and what that involves, then certainly reach out. One great place to start is to read that book, Charity, The Gifts of Giving. We'll throw a link for that for you. Just give some ideas on like how to go from, how to go from stuck to making some progress or making some motion. And I've got a lot of other things I can share about that. If you know any organizations that would be open to having a speaker talking about the global water crisis, either how they could support 1 million goal or how I can just share a message that helps support the work that they're doing, I would certainly love to be connected with that. So please reach out. If you are somebody that's seeking addiction recovery, you're in recovery, you're feeling stuck, you want to make some more progress, you know somebody, certainly reach out to me. If you live in if you live anywhere in the States, you can give us a shout. And if we have space for you at Realize U252, if it's the right place, then we can talk to you about what that looks like. We do have people from as far as Jersey, from California roots to North Carolina. So we take people from anywhere, get you plugged into this community. Also, if you are a veteran and you've struggled with any of these challenges that we've talked about since you've gotten out, and you'd like some support, you'd like me to point you in the right direction, or you'd like to see what it looks like to work with me, then certainly reach out. I would say first step would be go to valiantpath.vet, and you can check out that website, learn a little bit more about the unique challenges that veterans face that we address and how we do it a little differently than any other programs or resources that are out there. If you know of any audiences that would be open to hearing about those unique challenges, not only do I work with veterans one-on-one, but I also, as often as I can, speak to organizations about these unique challenges, about these three fundamental needs that we have and how they're lost as veterans transition, and the consequences of that, or the cost that happens because of those things that are lost for people that love veterans, for people that work with veterans, because it's very illuminating. And everything I've been told is that they've got a greater understanding or a better understanding of the plight or the challenges that veterans face, and it's helped them connect with them, understand them, and support veterans a lot better because of that. I think that was it.
Okay.
Yeah. So if any of those things resonate with you, or there's anything I can do to support you in your journey, then please don't hesitate to reach out. I'd love to connect, and I appreciate you listening to this whole long message, this very very in-depth, long-form conversation, which I'm so grateful for.
I'm the one who's grateful in this situation. I really appreciate the guests making time out of their days. I try my best to ensure that it's the best opportunity for them.
Yeah.
And I don't like to pressure people because I know people have lives.
Well, today was the perfect day, and that's why it worked out to be today.
A little coffee, but we'll make it work.
Yeah, that's it.
No, it was good, man. I really appreciate you reaching out to me. I wish we could have got it a year earlier, but you've done more ventures, and
that's right.
There's more things for people to be a participant of, or at least be educated by at this point. So that's nice. I'll close it out by positive words of affirmation to you, which is I really appreciate everything you're doing for the veteran community, for your local community, substance abuse, and honestly, it's pretty incredible for somebody who was active duty in the Marine Corps, a commissioned officer, piloting, running a unit, and then starts a nonprofit where you then eventually start traveling abroad to give water capability to indigenous people or people who are less fortunate than ourselves, that are going through extremely difficult hardships in their own villages and communities and stuff like that. It's pretty freaking wild. It's the reason why, like, the first time I had a conversation with him, I was like, this dude has an incredible organization who's literally benefiting on not only just a local level from education to a global level of literally impacting people with a significant source. I mean, water, you die in 3 days, by the way. That's how it works.
Yeah, certainly.
I don't know if you've never done SEER. A little bit of deprivation.
Yeah.
Be good for you to benefit and grow. But, as I transitioned out of the Marine Corps, I wanted to find organizations to participate in. And obviously now that I'm fully enveloped in now on an Unrestricted Shore, I'm obviously going to donate to the 1 million goal. I haven't done it yet, by the way.
I appreciate that, man. We appreciate it.
I'll donate, and then I'll
hopefully we'll get you on a trip with us.
Yeah, that'd be cool, man. I'll travel abroad too, for sure. I'll work with your partners and stuff like that. Yeah. By the way, we didn't talk about Rubicon. Rubicon is sick, by the way. Look into them as well. Pretty wild.
Absolutely, yeah. My buddy John. So now that he's working with Team Rubicon, he got me convinced to go through some of the training and stuff. So I've got my gray shirt, but I haven't been on any been deployed or anything with him yet. But I certainly keep that open. And I'd be open to the opportunity if something comes up.
Yeah, I've been looking at Rubicon for a little bit myself. It might be something I do in the future. Look into the organization, see how I can participate, because they're doing great work out there.
Well, maybe that'll be the next step. I'll get you connected with John Nonamaker, and you can talk to him about his journey and his water stuff and his experience with Team Rubicon.
Absolutely, yeah. Wherever he's out of, just let me know. I'm cool with it for sure. Just plug me. I travel to him.
Yeah.
I obviously do that for a living.
Yeah.
Even though I lose money doing this thing.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it to make money. So
don't be the giving tree. You got to keep it going for a while long enough.
Oh well, I'll be all right. Eventually, I'll start doing other ventures.
Yeah.
My goal eventually is to start a nonprofit. I'll talk to you offline about it.
Plus,
eventually, I'm going to interview myself too.
I like it.
And I got to share my story and what my end goals are in my life and where I come from, because people don't know anything about me really. People know constructs, but they don't really understand fully who I am. But so.
Well, I'll be happy to interview you sometime.
All right.
I'd like that.
Well, I travel to North Carolina, so I'm a dual citizen, so
yeah,
it works out. So I'll close out here. We're gonna have some offline discussions. He has a hard time. He's got
carpool.
He got a carpool. He's got a child.
I got to get to carpool before DSS does.
All right. So thanks for tuning in to Firing for Good podcast. I'll put all of Garrett's information out here, some of the organizations that he works with. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Episode 9 will be out sometime next year. So this is just a little filler in between. I'm glad I finally got Garret on as a guest. I really appreciated him taking the time of his day to be interviewed by me. Most people can't do a conversation for more than 5 minutes, and we're well over 3.5 hours.
It's felt like 20 minutes, though, I swear.
So cheers. I'll see you guys next time.